Benjamin Norton has
did say that one of the goals...
He's got Moss Robeson on, talking about Nafo. This will be a good piece for us, right? Go for this one. Big long piece. They talk for an hour 47. Yo, is this the wrong thing for us right now? Or do we do this one? The short. I don't want that one. I think we do the big long piece. All right, let's do it.
Goals was denazification. Again. Hey everyone, I'm Ben Norton, and you are watching or listening to Multipolarista. Today we are talking about Nazism and fascism, all of these topics that you can't really talk about anymore, because if you do talk about them, you're accused of Russian disinformation and propaganda. Now, clearly, you know, on the show, I'm not a cheerleader for the Russian.
So this is a tent. This must be my spare tent. I'll be using that for drying, and then I'll use that for vegging as well. I think I have to get one more light, don't I?
War in Ukraine. The war is extremely tragic. I have said many times that the best solution is a mediated settlement, diplomacy. Unfortunately, the West, which helped to start this war, NATO, has opposed diplomacy. And they've also said that if you talk about Nazis and fascists and ultranationalists in Ukraine, that you're engaged in spreading Russian disinformation. That is inconvenient for the actual facts, because the reality is that there are Nazis, there are ultranationalists and fascists in Ukraine. This is not just Russian propaganda. Clearly, it is in Russia's interest to exaggerate the influence of fascists in Ukraine, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. That doesn't mean they're not there. That doesn't mean they don't have a significant influence in the state security services. And today I'm joined by one of the leading researchers on fascists and ultranationalists in Ukraine, Moss Robeson. He has a series of amazing articles. He's done a lot of research on this. And I'm in the description below, I'll link to his Substack, which is about the lobby of Stepan Bandera, the Ukrainian Nazi collaborator and ultranationalist leader. And he also has a separate blog that's called Ooks, Kooks, and Spooks, talking about fascism and Ukraine and the far right. Moss is an independent...
Is it just one light or two? I ordered two.
Researcher, totally independent. He doesn't work for like Russian media or whatever. I mean, we're immediately going to get attacked as like Russian propagandists or whatever. But no, I mean, we're both completely independent, and we recognize that there is a very real problem here that needs to be acknowledged. So Moss, let's start with the situation in Ukraine. You know, of course, Russia invaded in February, and Russia did say that one of the goals was denazification. Again, it's in Russia's interest to exaggerate that, but...
All right, I'm guessing one came with the computer and the kit, and one came just with a light.
But there has been a significant influence of fascist groups that follow Nazi collaborator Stepan Bandera.
It's like weed Christmas over here.
Bandera has become honored by the Ukrainian state since the 2014 US-backed coup. And you have done a lot of research on this over years. So we are today going to talk about Nafo, which is this NATO propaganda operation that was founded by a literal Nazi, as you reported. But before we get to that, maybe you can just explain, you know, your research interests here into Stepan Bandera and the lobby, and what is this far-right ultranationalist tendency?
My second tent did not come with a light. I was expecting it to only be a space for drying and curing, and I've since leveled up my understanding of what I can do with the tent, so I'm gonna need another light.
We're talking about in Ukraine.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on.
This is what Moss Robeson sounds like.
Ironically, for all the propaganda about Stepan Bandera and
Moss is a nerd just like us.
Content.
You love to see it.
All the concern about propaganda about Bandera and Nazis in
They've got a Ukraine flag behind them.
Ukraine. There's really no, Russian propaganda even doesn't
Wow.
shed light on the fact that Bandera's organization still exists and is quite powerful today. And, I think people who I guess you could call my critics or haters or whatever like to paint my research as trying to make a unifying theory of everything about the OUNB. The OUNB controls all the governments in the West and Ukraine and blah, 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 which is not what my research is about, but it is, I think, does shed light on the fact that this organization is quite influential. And really, there are no journalists who are willing to touch this with a 10-foot pole, which if there are a lot of journalists and historians who would be a lot better at doing this research than me. But because no one is, I can't really move on from this because if I do, then, no one else will be doing it. But for me, I got interested in the history of the Bandera organization in the United States. And it's complicated because, the CIA didn't really support Bandera, but like a breakaway group of what you might call the moderate rebels, the moderate Banderite rebels, who, after the war, they were part of Bandera's organization through the war. And then, afterwards, professed that they've now reformed and they're now the moderate rebels. And to some extent that is true that they did make like a pragmatic change in strategy. They gave up by the 1950s, realized that the Ukrainian resistance led by the OUNB and Soviet Ukraine was totally defeated and wasn't going anywhere. And so they also moved towards a more pluralistic and like evolutionary strategy. And they on their CIA funded newspapers might include like a token socialist or whatnot, so for which the actual Bandera hardliners accused them of being neo-communists, and getting kind of lost in the weeds here. But basically I got really interested in this history, and I because at a certain point, 2014, 2015, 2016, I kind of gave up on trying to make sense of the truth of what was actually happening in the present day. And I dug into this history that's super interesting. And, you could spend your whole life digging further into, and you'll keep finding more and more interesting connections and stuff. But so I got so into this that I just kind of naively assumed that the OUNB ceased to exist. OUNB being the Bandera faction of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, which did collaborate with the Nazis. I mean, they had a rather complicated relationship. But in short, they started World War II and ended World War II on good terms with Nazi Germany. There was a period, basically 1943-44, where they were ostensibly anti-Nazi. But anyways, I assumed that this organization ceased to exist after Ukraine became independent, because mission accomplished, right? Except no, that was just kind of like phase one. And I'm really grateful to you for helping to helping me to realize that this organization still exists, because I, in spring of 2019, went and visited this cemetery in New Jersey, which I think is the largest Ukrainian American cemetery in the country. And so, a lot of just regular people are buried there, but they also have a lot of fascists and Nazi collaborators buried there, including a special section for veterans of the OUNB's Ukrainian Insurgent Army. But when I got there, I realized that the section was really, in particular, was a lot of the ones who are working with the CIA, including Mykola Lebed, who was Bandera's second deputy during the war, and at a point was like running the OUNB, and arguably was a bigger
Holy shit, dude.
war criminal than Bandera himself. But then he becomes the leader of the democratic OUN faction supported by the CIA. And so I get there and I'm looking at these graves, and I start to I think I tweeted about it, and you messaged me and encouraged me to write something about this. So I did. And in doing so and looking more into it, I realized
it seems like Moss is a comrade. Yoshi, what are you doing?
that So at that
Yoshi's in a box. She's happy.
time, I lived in New Paltz, New York, which is maybe an hour north of New York City. And, you know,
By the way, sorry to keep pausing. I think I got everything except for one carbon filter. I gotta find out whether or not I paid for that. Because I gotta pipe out, like when I get the the drying tent, I gotta pipe it out without smelling it up.
at that time, it's very
Yoshi's
scenic. There's like
box.
mountains
Yeah,
outside
she's
my
in a
window.
box.
And, you know, I'd get overwhelmed by this historical research, and I'd look out the mountains to, you know, calm myself down. And then I find out that on the other side of those mountains is the main OUNB affiliated summer camp, which is really a point of pilgrimage for the Bandera people worldwide.
What?
Largely because, as you can see there in that first picture, they have what they call the Heroes Monument. That was built in 1962 in response to the assassination of Bandera in 1959. So they have these larger-than-life busts of OUN leaders. The main one being Bandera, and also Shukevich, who was the leader of the Ukrainian Insurgent Army,
Leo?
another Nazi collaborator, war criminal. And so I went and visited this place, and it was probably the most surreal moment of my life.
DiCaprio.
And
all right,
you know, that was when I realized that these people never really went away. And then from there, I've just gone further and further down this rabbit hole. And so yeah, this is in some ways this is all your fault for
Yo, Moss has been going hard on this.
for you know.
You know how like Phil Collins, when he did the music for Tarzan, like he did not have to go that hard, but he did. Okay, and he did it for us. This is what Moss Robeson is doing.
Setting me up to just be this monomaniacally obsessed with OUNB. And so, you know.
Yeah, I can, but I'm not gonna.
In some ways, I'm kind of a one-trick pony. But this OUNB stuff really has. There's a lot of different directions to go with this. Like maybe we'll come back to this at the end. But
get your own stream.
Like the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation was literally founded as a successor organization to something called the National Captive Nations Committee, and the Bandera people were in the vanguard of that organization. And so there's, you know, and that's not to say that Victims of Communism is an OUNB front. They don't think they really have anything to do with them these days. But the legacy of the OUNB and the history of their rather complicated relationship with the powers that be in Washington is, you know, extremely relevant to what we're seeing today. Because really, I mean, this is an argument that could get into more, but like,
yo, it's incredible. I'm just a dumb fuck who happened into some very relevant contemporary world-changing events. And this guy's an academic. I'd say I got a better deal. You know what I mean?
Like, you really wouldn't have this issue of neo-Nazis if it wasn't for the incubation.
I paid less
of these people in the United States and Canada, and then, you know, after Ukraine became,
I didn't have to read as many books. Get wrecked, loser. R.I.P. Bozo.
They basically re-exported, or they re-imported themselves back into Ukraine, and blah blah blah. But it's
this guy's like a think tanky. You know what I mean? He's like the opposite of a think tank person. Think tanky.
Yeah, it's all crazy, and for whatever reason, no journalist is really willing to talk about this. Although historians who have done
makes a lot of sense, Ben
groundbreaking scholarship about the history of the OUN and World War II, they can tell you the OUNB still exists because, you know, the OUNB has gone after them for doing this history. So
this guy fucks.
It's, you know, it's really beyond dispute that this organization still exists. The question really is just how influential and important is it? And my argument is the answer is very much so.
No, they're doing Nazi apologia tours in the United States. They were just doing it like weeks ago.
Yeah, and you mentioned there are some
Yo, Moss. This fucker's dank, motherfucker. He's dank.
Especially the website Defending History. I think you've collaborated with them. They're, mainstream respected scholars who have done history on these attempts to rewrite the history of Nazi collaborators, of fascists, of the double genocide theory that is being promoted by a lot of these NATO and EU member states. David Katz,
the Holodomor was not real,
has done a lot of research on that. And you've, I think, been the leading researcher on detailing these fascist Banderite networks in North America and the US and Canada as well. And we can talk about that later. I mean, in Canada, they go right up to the former foreign minister and current deputy prime minister, Chrystia Freeland. Her grandfather was himself a Ukrainian Nazi collaborator who edited a fascist propaganda newspaper that was printed using a printing press that was stolen from a Jewish publisher who was sent to a Nazi extermination camp. So, these Banderite networks, they go quite literally up to the deputy prime minister of Canada's government.
Although one thing I will add about that is, ironically, for all the attention that Chrystia Freeland gets about the Banderites, they're really much more influential in the Conservative Party. And, there's a lot of people make points about, hey guys, Democrats and Ukrainian Nazis. But again, these people are right-wingers. So they vote for Trump. They vote for the Conservative Party in Canada. And, if it was an election between Chrystia Freeland and Stephen Harper or some clone of his, I think they would vote for the Conservatives, or at least they would be torn. But also, I think part of the reason why actual, Russian propaganda isn't really shining a light on this is because, or rather one of the takeaways, more important takeaways, I think, of my research is that when I talk about Banderites, I don't mean just, someone who's an apologist for Stepan Bandera. I mean like actual cult followers, sworn members of Bandera's organization, or at least people who are members of front groups of the OUNB or organizations that were started by OUNB. So like Right Sector is not OUNB, but Right Sector was started by this organization called Stepan Bandera's Trident, which was formed in 1993 as paramilitary arm of an OUNB political party, which was co-founded by the leader of OUNB and also a Ukrainian American who I'm not quite on him. I'm kind of fuzzy, but he played a role in helping to kickstart he played a role in helping the Azov movement build internationally. And I don't think he's involved anymore, but
is it the Chicago guy?
Yeah. So for me, the Banderites are not just, the word Banderite is not just synonymous with Ukrainian Nazi or Ukrainian nationalist. I mean something much more specific than that. And which is why I think Russian propagandists don't like me very much, just like, pro-Ukrainian or Western propagandists don't like me, because it's really inconvenient for all sides. And I think a lot of this research kind of cuts through the propaganda on both sides.
Yeah, and I should point out that you've been doing this research for many years now, when most people who are now calling for sending billions of dollars more weapons to Ukraine couldn't point out Ukraine on a map, even if they can actually today point it out on a map. That's debatable. But you've been doing research on this for years. And, I'll say that, I haven't done nearly as much research as you, but I've also been reporting on some of this. Like when Andriy Parubi, who was himself a founder of two Ukrainian fascist organizations, including the Social National Party of Ukraine, which is a Nazi-style party, he was invited by the U.S. Congress to speak in Washington. And Andriy Parubi at the time was the chair of the Rada, the Ukrainian parliament. So this is a real problem that has been going on for years. The Atlantic Council, which is NATO's de facto think tank, published an article saying, yes, Ukraine has a Nazi problem, a fascist problem. This is not RT. It's real. So
how do you get to
this is something that you've been reporting on for years. And now, of course, that Russia invaded and escalated this war that's been going on since 2014, since the U.S.-backed coup in Ukraine removed
I mean, this is live. Like, I'm live.
Elected government and installed this ultra-nationalist government that honored Bandera. this war that's been going on, that had been going on for 8 years, it escalated into a new phase, and all of that history was simply erased. And now we're told that this conflict began in February
If you're sucked in, that means you get it, right? Like you're understanding what's happening here.
February 24th of this year.
I'm sucked in, homie.
Not just 8 years of history, erasing decades and decades of history.
Speaking of decades and decades, this guy.
All right, you read
Emil
books.
Revyuk, this is a picture of. He was the
Truman
president of the Ukrainian United Ukrainian Organizations of America, which was the forerunner to the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. He was also editor in chief. At this point, he was a deputy or associate editor of Svoboda, not to be confused with the far right political party in Ukraine, which Svoboda means freedom or liberty. And so Svoboda is the name of the main, I think the oldest continuously published Ukrainian newspaper in the world. And originally had socialist origins and then turned nationalist by the 1930s. But so 1939, he testifies to the House Un-American Activities Committee. And I'll just read from, there's a caption on the back, but it says, Emil Revyuk, associate editor of Svoboda, Ukrainian language daily newspaper in Jersey City, pictured as he testified before that DIES committee here, House Un-American Activities Committee. September 28th, 1939, Revyuk told the committee that efforts have been made to organize 800,000 Ukrainians in the U.S. into an organization ruled by a Führer and sympathetic to Hitler. This was a huge debate in the Ukrainian community in the 1930s. A lot of leaders of the Ukrainian community, many
Has he got this on his shelf?
of them socialists, but even those were, they were very anti-communist socialists. They weren't like spreading Soviet propaganda. And so this guy, among other things, he testifies about there was a Ukrainian press service in Berlin that was also affiliated, that was run by the OUN, and this is before it split into OUNB and OUNM, the main two factions. And
I don't know enough about that.
And they were, sending like basically Nazi propaganda to the Ukrainian press in the United States and in Canada. And the CIA, after the war, when it sets up its newspapers run by the moderate Banderite rebels, that includes people who were involved in the Ukrainian press service in Berlin. And so, there's all these examples of the people that the U.S. government was starting to investigate 1941 or so. 5 years later, the CIA is working with them. And it's like, even if it wasn't true that there was, let's just say for the sake of argument, there's absolutely no truth to the United States supporting neo-Nazis in Ukraine directly or intentionally, that regardless, the CIA, in order to justify working with these people, had to whitewash them. And ironically, the State Department and the White House, even Winston Churchill, when he makes his famous Iron Curtain speech, and he's naming all the great capitals of Europe trapped behind the Iron Curtain, he doesn't mention Kiev. George Kennan, architect of the U.S. strategy of Cold War strategy containing the Soviet Union, he said,
I love it when I'm watching content and it feels like every sentence is like a deep dive that I got to do. I hate it, but I love it at the same time.
Ukraine is to Russia, or the Soviet Union what Pennsylvania is to the United States. I mean, the United States government did not support what they saw as Ukrainian separatism during the Cold War. And so instead, the CIA, in order to work with this faction, told the State Department, no, these aren't nationalists. They're moderate Democrats. And so they lied to themselves. They lied to other parts of the government. And for example, that the founding book on Ukrainian nationalism, written by this guy John Armstrong in 1959, he considered himself an old friend of Yaroslav Stetsko, who was the deputy to Bandera and then leads the OUNB in 1968. Also leads this thing.
That's the guy. I think Stetsko is one of these busts. If y'all remember the picture of the Ukrainian, the current, I don't know what the title. It's like military leader in Ukraine. He's in this office in front of these busts of this picture of him with these other leaders with these busts. One's Stepan Bandera, I do believe one's Shikevich, and I think the other one's this guy.
We'll probably get into later. The deputy
not
himself
not
an old
Moss.
friend of Yaroslav
The guy.
Stetsko, who was
Stetsko.
the deputy to
I could be making that up.
Bandera, and then leads the OUNB in 1968. Also leads this thing we'll probably get into later, the Anti-Bolshevik Bloc of Nations, which Scott and John Lee Anderson very accurately described as the, quote, largest and most important umbrella for former Nazi collaborators in the world.
Have a mod explain what's going on.
And then this book ends up becoming the, the thing that the CIA.
Like, if I could have a mod come up with an auto response when people are confused about why links are timed out, I'll copy and paste that, and I'll train the bot to say that.
CIA references to.
Yeah. Help me come up with a response.
Justify their whitewashing.
I'm lazy.
It's I can go on, but it's the whole whitewash narrative about OUN or the OUNUPA. Really, the CIA has a lot of responsibility for that.
Is that how they say it?
So, there's a great book somewhere here behind me called Blowback by Christopher Simpson.
Oh, there it is.
And really, the whole issue of neo-Nazis in Ukraine.
No, it doesn't explain it.
It's blowback of U.S. foreign policy, supporting Nazi collaborators and stuff.
That's not it. That's not it. Sorry to keep interrupting the content here. Is that how it comes off, though? Is that how it comes off? I'm trying to, I don't want, any random person to come into my chat, post some dumb fucking link, some malicious-ass link, and then someone in my chat click it, and, they've been hacked or something, right? I don't want that to happen. Am I overthinking this? Am I y'all? Let me know. You can advise me here. I'm trying to figure this out. I'm trying to run a nice tight ship. Okay. What are we doing? There's got to be at least one level of okay, hold on. And also, I don't know. There is this other angle, which is hey, homie. There are many members of this community, and if you're going to be hey, Dan, or whatever, you should check this link out. I don't know. Invest in the community. Help me pay my bills. Couple bucks. And the truth is, if you can't do the couple bucks, I get that. But anyone who's been part of this community for any amount of time knows that if you contribute and you're a valuable member of the community, you're going to get gift subs. That almost never not happens, right? We got a good thing going here. I'm very fortunate, and to an extent, you're one of those folks, doesn't have the money every month for a sub. I get that. I can't afford to subscribe to all the channels that I want to watch. I get that. But invest in the community, and I think it'll pay back. It comes back.
Hey guys.
Yeah. All right, you're saying add to my comment above. Thank you for the link. Links are timed out just to protect chat from any possible spam, but don't worry, I can see your link and maybe we'll get to it. All right. I'm wondering if I could find a way to just add it to the response that the chatter gets when they do that. I don't know. Either way, how about this? Let's work towards a solution. to work towards it. We'll come up with a command that me or anyone can use, which is, I don't know. What's the command going to be? I've already got links, so I need help. God damn it. There are too many layers to this fucking shit. I can't believe you've done this. All right. That fucking song's a bop. That's the truth. All right. You got me good. You got me good. You got me good. Hope you like that. Fucking asshole. Okay. Where were we?
Deluding themselves about what they were getting involved with.
Yeah, I mean, the history is pretty clear. Toward the end of World War II, the CIA, well, the OSS, which became the CIA, and British intelligence began recruiting a lot of these former Nazis, including former scientists and engineers in what became Operation Paperclip, and then later for a bunch of stay-behind networks that became Operation Gladio. The CIA, or OSS.
Oh my God, I'm like truly learning over here.
Then CIA, then NATO supported a bunch of these former Nazi collaborators and fascists and ultranationalists in order to create these stay-behind networks, preparing for a potential war, a hot war with the Soviet Union. And these groups were linked to terror attacks and right-wing extremism across Europe, especially in Italy, which is why it's called Operation Gladio. That was the Italian branch, but there were stay-behind networks in a dozen European countries. In the Baltic states, the Nazi collaborators known as the Forest Brothers were supported by the CIA and NATO. In fact, a few years ago, NATO produced a slick, not even a documentary, like a fiction movie based on, like a fictionalized version of this history, honoring these Nazi collaborators in the Baltic states, the Forest Brothers, as anti-Russian heroes. So, I mean, it's clear why NATO, the US, these Western intelligence agencies supported these groups. They saw them as useful assets, just as we know that the CIA supported the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, who later became Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. There's a long history of this, and we could spend hours and hours talking about this, and I'm sure we will talk more about that history, Mas, but I want to talk a little bit now about Nafo specifically, because we established this fact. Again, it's not Russian propaganda.
You think
this
I need a
historical
haircut?
fact that Ukraine has had a significant problem with fascists, Nazi collaborators, far-right extremists going back to World War II, and especially after the overthrow of the Soviet Union and the cultivation of these networks in exile during the First Cold War. You mentioned the anti-Bolshevik Bloc of Nations. There's also the World Anti-Communist League. John McCain was on the board, and the World Anti-Communist League, which rebranded, but that's the original name. They supported many of these Ukrainian fascists, along with the Contras in Nicaragua and all these other groups, Japanese ultranationalists. And they have had, for decades, links to the US government, the Canadian government, European governments. And in the 2014 coup in Ukraine, many of these far-right groups, not all Banderites, but far-right groups in Ukraine played a key role as the muscle behind the coup. And then, of course, this overthrew the elected government in Ukraine, and it set off this violent conflict. You have the rise of Azov, Aidar Battalion, Tornado Battalion, all of these fascistic ultranationalist groups. We can talk about them in a bit, but this is, of course, the very brief history in a nutshell. We fast forward. This, war goes on for 8 years right on Russia's border, and then Russia demands these security guarantees from the US and NATO and the EU in December of last year, 2021. All of those are rejected. The Minsk II agreements were not enforced. Germany and France were pressured by the US not to enforce them. The Ukrainian government didn't enforce them. And then Russia invades in February, setting off another stage of this war. And this gives birth to a lot of information war. A huge part of this war is fought online. And one of these groups that emerged calls itself Nafo, the North America. There's a Freudian slip. NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. This is the North Atlantic Fellas Organization, and they basically are an.
It's so embarrassing, dude. The meme right off the bat is not funny. It is just not. The right wing cannot meme. Right off the bat, it's not funny. What are they doing over there? Did they not? It's like the right wing does this thing. You can imagine a writer's room, you know? Number one, they don't let anyone funny into the writer's room. And then number two, they don't spend any amount of time workshopping ideas. They come up with the first idea they get. You can totally see this happening. You're the fly on the wall. You see the creator of Nafo come up with it, and they're like, oh, yeah. Write that down. That's it. That's all they did. You could totally see that going down. All right, fine, yep. All right, next. How are we going to defend Bob and Libya again? These people are coming on to us. Right. They spent no time, oh my God, the right wing cannot meme. Yeah, that's the thing. I made as someone who's made a meme or two in my own time, you could just see it. Low energy, dude. If you want to get in the meme game, you gotta, you gotta put your skin in the meme game. Otherwise, it's just easy to see through it. You got to put that skin in the meme game.
Online propaganda campaign. They've been supported publicly by multiple U.S. military branches, Western governments, Ukrainian newspapers. But you did a really good and very important article based on this research showing that Nafo was also founded by a literal Nazi.
Kamil Kamila.
A Polish anti-Semite, far-right extremist. Your article,
also a Holocaust denier.
Article that you published in October, I linked to it in the description below. It's called Ooks, Kooks, and...
I think it's Ukes, as in Ukrainians. Is that what that means? Ukes?
Spooks, Nafo. So that's the very brief overview. I just wanted to provide all that context because some people who...
85 followers. What the fuck, dude? That is quality content over there.
Quality content.
I just said that.
Who listen to this might not know some of that history. So Mas, now that I've established that, let's talk about who the founder of Nafo is. His name is Kamil Kamila. At least that's
they locked up their Twitter account.
The name he uses on social media. He's tweeted a bunch of blatant fascist Nazi propaganda honoring
to fit in
Hitler, disputing that 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. We're talking about a literal Nazi here. Talk about who this is and Nafo, what Nafo...
Kamila. You're a Nazi. You're a Nazi.
Is in the research that you did.
Well, he's just a video game gamer and, wrote, he
Those are my least favorite kinds of gamers.
He used to describe himself as a freelance journalist. He wrote video game reviews. He also, on his Twitter profile, used to say that his hot takes can be bought and paid for, which may have been a joke, but...
Oh my God. That is so fucked up because on my channel, you can buy my opinions for as little as $5 a month. Please support the channel.
But if I said that, it'd be held against me for the rest of my life as evidence that I'm a propagandist. But
$5. $5. I'll say whatever you want.
But he, basically found meaning in his life by, with this Nafo thing. And he is, since this ironic or funny enough, when I
I'm desperate.
wrote
Okay.
this article, it wasn't until after
Thank you, homie.
I wrote it that I
Thank you
came
for the
across
5
this stuff.
bomb. Get out of here.
So the article actually doesn't get into him very much, but
Love your face.
since this thread went kind of viral, at least by my standards,
Yeah.
The Nafo people and others have tried to, they've said, oh, he was just joking.
It is incredible ammo to use against these people.
And, oh, he's not really the founder, but he's undisputably the founder. I mean, they all...
Come on.
It's
Who's
just
that?
ridiculous. And
Ert Bell.
and
Huh?
so, yeah, I mean, it all started with he had this Shiba Inu profile picture that...
Yo, when did the Shiba Inu meme start? Was that like 2015?
like it's like a soldier or whatever, and then someone else wanted one and said,
Yeah, with a 5 bomb. Love your face, homie. Thank you.
I'll make a...
Oh my God. I think I like you more than I like Ross. You know what I mean? It's just like whoever gives me more gift subbies, I'll like more. It's just that simple. I'll say whatever you want.
donation to the charity of your choice if you make me one. And he said, send it to the
Thank you,
Georgian
homie.
Legion, which is not a charity, but a really brutal far right like battalion in Ukraine. And then from there, the rest is history. That became the model. That if you want a fella, as they call it, you would make a donation to the Georgian Legion, and then eventually this kind of this, I guess, brand called Saint Javelin got involved, and then you could make a donation to Saint Javelin or the Georgian Legion, and Saint Javelin sent their donations to the Georgian Legion too. But then they partnered with something called the Ukrainian World Congress, which again, I'm not trying to say this is everything's OUMB conspiracy, but the Banderites really dominate the Ukrainian World Congress. Every president of the Ukrainian World Congress since 1998 has been a bona fide Banderite. Currently the first vice president of the Ukrainian World Congress is the guy Stefan Romanyev, who was literally the international leader of the OUNB since 2009. And so they send the money to the Ukrainian World Congress, and the Ukrainian World Congress...
Every sentence a deep dive.
...sends it to the Ukrainian government.
Yo, when you listen to a Marxist, every sentence is a deep dive. And... Wait. Where am I going with this? It just sort of feels like when you're listening to a reactionary, it's like a deep dive, but like in the opposite way. Like, how do I disprove this? Whereas you listen to like someone with Marxist class analysis or whatever, someone with a dialectical, historical, material analysis, and then like all you want to do is dive deeper, you know? You listen to a reactionary, and you're like, fuck, I got to spend 3 hours debunking this shit. What am I getting at? I don't know, whatever.
Government, and presumably they're taking a cut. I mean, something relevant about this guy and his testimony is the Bandera people have had the same strategy for decades. They live off of the Ukrainian community skimming from other organizations, and it's basically a criminal organization. But so I'm getting off track, but Nafo is just, they call it an internet army. I'm kind of agnostic about how organic this thing is, because it's so juvenile that it almost seems like beneath like the CIA to kickstart this. Also, there's a
nothing is beneath the CIA.
Well, okay, but
I mean, sexual blackmail, supporting Nazi collaborators.
Yeah, but I mean, also though, if you look at like there's some official U.S. government cyber.
No, it's really about the percentage of organic to inorganic. Organic, as in volunteers, and inorganic versus like how much this is being steered by paid individuals.
account, and the memes that they put out are just so
Vegetable
like
blackmail.
elementary. It's, you know, I'm not convinced that they're necessarily the brainchild of this, but as Ivana,
Same thing as a lot of color revolutions we see. They take an organic movement and then they co-opt it. It's not. It's the same. It's like. It's like Iran, but on Twitter. It's really not that complicated. If you were the CIA, you'd be doing this. You're like, all right, let's throw our support behind this thing. It's not that hard. So, like, yeah, mayhaps it was not originated by CIA, but they're always on the lookout for this stuff to co-opt. And then people know this, so they're always on the lookout to create these things to begin with. I love the dialectic.
I love the dialectic.
Stradner, who's works at the Kiev Post, and she's a fellow for the Foundation for Defense of Democracy. She openly describes herself as a neocon, and which previously said she's a civilian Nafo propagandist. That was around the time that she joined the Kiev Post, which is now just a complete, might as well be called the Nafo Post at this point. And she joined them as their special correspondent for like information war. So she really joined them as their like Nafo special correspondent. And where was I going with that? So she's explicitly said, the whole point is to gaslight what they consider Russian propagandists. And of course, if you say anything if you don't toe the line 100%, you're a Russian propagandist. So, according to some of the more extreme people in the Nafo community, even the New York Times and Bellingcat and all these major publications, they're all Russian propaganda also, because they have in the past reported on Azov. So, some people say mockingly, like, oh, so I guess the Russian...
Oh my God, dude. I think I've come up with a new, what they call as a razor, which is if this person showed up in my chat, would we make fun of them or not? That's Ross. Ross has got the trench question, the trench analogy. What do we call it? Which is like, if they're running at you during a war and you're in the trench, are you going to shoot them or not? Mine is more material for me. Like it makes more sense. It's like legit. It's like, if you show up in my chat and you're saying what Moss is saying, this motherfucker's like a fucking emperor in my fucking chat. Like, does this shit sink or swim? This shit swims. I'm just doing dolphin flips. Do dolphins do backflips? I don't know, man. So that's my razor, the Idan Simpson razor. Sharp. It cuts to the bone.
Putin has infiltrated, the New York Times years ago, and the FBI when it was investigating far-right people linked to Azov, and some of these Nafo people are, think yes, that must be the case. And so,
well, I mean, it does sound obviously crazy. I mean, it's completely absurd, but this goes back to this whole like fascist paranoid claim that the U.S. government is run by communists, these ultra far right Cold Warriors who thought that like FDR was surrounded by communists and Eisenhower was surrounded by communists, and there these anti-Semites who referred to Roosevelt as like Rosenfeld, and this joke that like the CIA is supposedly run by communists, and the purging of the State Department for anyone who speaks Russian is a communist. Like, this kind of fascist paranoia is decades old. Anyone who doesn't support Hitler is a communist.
Stradner once tweeted, she said, if you want to learn what mathematic infinity means, or what in mathematics infinity means. Just observe the number of Russian mouthpieces in the United States. That's there's nothing more fun for Nafo than to gaslight Russian propagandists. And then so after this article came out, she goes, "There's a campaign against information warfare analysts, and today's article was from a source enjoying a boost from sanctioned outlets, one of which is controlled by Russian intel. They tried to discredit, make no mistake, they will go after more people, but it won't work. This is not a conspiracy theory." And she's talking about, some Russian website that is allegedly connected to Russian intelligence republished my blog without my knowledge or consent. And, it had nothing to do with the numbers this thing did on Twitter. And yet, because this obscure website publishes it, that means I've been boosted and this is all part of a Russian intel thing. And then
I mean, anyone who's ever written an article on like a blog or an independent news website, that people frequently republish your article. They don't ask for permission. That's just part of the internet, like blogging culture, right? Mm-hmm. So if someone at one of these websites you've never even like read or had nothing to do with, if they republish one of your articles, then these propagandists who work for these Western think tanks or Ukrainian media outlets or whatever, they accuse you of being like linked to Russia because this website that is supposedly linked to the Kremlin published something that you didn't even know about without your permission. And I mean, that's their methodology, and it's so sloppy, but they don't need to be accurate because it's all just a smear campaign to try to distract from.
Whatever works. An empire will use whatever works.
The undeniable fact that the guy who founded this popular propaganda campaign that is being boosted by the U.S. government and the Kiev Post and Western media outlets and politicians, U.S. sitting Congress people, the guy who founded it is literally a Nazi.
And they say, "Oh, he's not our leader. We're this decentralized, organic movement, leaderless movement."
And a movement's organic because they're always insisting it's organic.
And yet it seems like a cult based on, this guy. I don't know how anyone could defend this guy, but 99% of Nafo has gotten behind him and not only said, "Oh, don't worry about this, it's no big deal," but actually given him credit, like, "Wow, you've really grown as a person. Like you've really handled this with grace," is some of the comments they make. And then there was something I didn't get into. There's a new thing called, well, it's not exactly new, but there's something called dark Nafo. And so the guy,
that doesn't sound good.
The guy who starts Nafo is a Polish Holocaust denier or Nazi, whatever you want to call him, definitely anti-Semitic. And, also
and I just really briefly, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no.
There's so many details here. I just want to highlight some of these tweets from, again.
Dark Nafo? Oh, man. What? Ugh. The fuck is Dark Nafo?
This is the guy who founded Nafo, @_Camellia. He has this meme here, and there's this meme, and it's this guy talking to a therapist, and the therapist has like a Jewish skull cap.
It took me a minute to figure this out myself.
And he says, "But
I'm starting to think Ben's watching my content.
Why would they use wooden doors if they were?" I can't read here. But why would they use wooden doors if it was a gas chamber? And then the therapist, there's like this anti-Semitic meme of him like clasping his hands, and it says, "The Goyim know, shut it down."
Is that how you say? I thought it was Goyim.
So he's literally now engaged in Holocaust revisionism, denying that Jews were put into gas chambers in Nazi
and like
Germany.
what's
the Goyim or Goyim? I don't know.
What's the joke? I would like some.
Yeah, like I had to dig in.
Want to explain what is.
All right, so the joke is, let's see if I can get this right. Someone is on the they're like getting therapy, and they're like questioning, I guess they're questioning the narrative about gas chambers and wooden doors. I have no idea what the fuck's going on there. And apparently the therapist, we did this. We had to go into the depth. All right, maybe Ben will.
Humorous
Okay.
about this. Like, let's just pretend.
Why do I have to explain this?
It's not offensive. Like, what is actually the funny component of this? It's literally what's funny is
there's nothing funny.
The Holocaust denial. Like, oh, look at us. But, and then the thing you've got.
And then, speaking of supposedly funny jokes, here he repeatedly tweets video of people during the Black Lives Matter protesters, people driving their cars into the protesters, and Kama said this is extremely based, and he repeatedly said that and said it was funny. And then here are some other examples. I mean, he also openly praised Nazi and white supremacist terrorists and mass murderers.
There was, like, when we looked at this, I was confused about just about everything, and we had to figure everything out.
I mean,
I'm like, who's that guy?
Like, he is a textbook fascist, a textbook Nazi. He said it's nice.
But that's what they do. They want to post, and they have you not exactly know what they're talking about, so you can sort of just brush it off and ignore it. But they know what they're talking about on their little inner circle, and they feel like they're doing it in a public space, which empowers them. Fuck that shit. Fuck Nazis.
Nice, like he went in these like internet things and said, like, what dictator are you? And he just said Adolf Hitler, and he said nice. Like, this guy openly, he admires Hitler. He's a Holocaust denier, and people are like, oh, well, he has a past that is very controversial, but he's moved away from that past. Yeah, he deleted some pro-Nazi tweets. This guy's a Nazi.
Actually, scroll down to the bottom. He deleted some 2,800 jokes, and one of them, if you actually, the first one. Look, I mean, so they have a lecture on right-wing terrorism. And his response is, if you hire clowns, don't be surprised when you're left with a circus. This isn't a joke. Like, this is
like one of these things. I'm like, explain this to me. What?
Just him thinking that, bringing attention to right-wing terrorism is like, I don't know. Yeah, only one solution to all this.
He's an exterminationist. I mean, yeah, and again, him praising people who run their cars into Black Lives Matter protests. Here he praises the Crusaders. He's a crusader. I
assume that's like some asylum seeker or migrant who's being abused, or in the bottom image. And
what is that?
And the top is Christian crusaders fighting a war against Ottoman Turkey, against Muslims.
And the other line is
rediscover your roots. And it's Generation Europa, which is a fascist group, white supremacist group.
The other line is, oh, but this was years ago. But I mean, this one's from 3 years ago, but some of the other ones are from 2020. Like, the pandemic we were like 6 months into the pandemic when some of this stuff was being tweeted. Like, we're the same age. So I don't buy this, I've not ever been part of like gaming culture. So I don't know, maybe there's some credence to this. Oh, he's just a gamer and they're all Nazi. I don't know. But unless that's what you're going for, I mean, I can't imagine having posted this stuff 2 years ago at the age of 24, and now at the age of 26, I'm a new person. Because also,
and yet you had all these people, they made this.
Yeah, that's the joke, Russ. So funny, haha.
Campaign of "I stand with Kama" as if he's like a victim.
Yeah.
Because you expose that he's a Nazi.
With the fucking... Oh my God. Homies, you're seeing all of the signs of a Nazi right there, and Twitter just lets them post. Nafo profile picture, this Nazi cross, the Ukraine flag, and the sunflower. Like, all of those things put together spells out Nazi. And I'm telling you, if you don't see that, you're just not paying attention enough. You need to see this.
And this is what I meant, like the cult-like stuff. Like, they're saying, "Oh, we don't have any leaders," but they idolize this guy, and it's actually splintered Nafo to some extent.
I simply don't take you seriously if you don't see this.
And over people, the fact that there's this thing called Dark Nafo, and part of Dark Nafo's whole thing is...
The fuck is Dark Nafo? I don't know, but I have to take a break. And we're going to get into that next in about 3 to 5 minutes. Love your face.
Is the two proponents moving, each more furiously ahead of the other, trying to make put as much space to get to some goal. That model doesn't explain arms escalation. What we have had, rather, has been an arms chase, with one side, the U.S., unilaterally escalating each time, and the other side, the Soviet Union, playing catch-up, often with a 2 to 7 year lag in the particular weapon system. That was true of the A-bomb, the hydrogen bomb, the long-range bomber, submarine-launched missiles, the MIRVs, the multiple warheads, the ICBMs, tactical nuclear weapons, solid fuel rockets, and now even today with the MX, the cruise, the Pershing, and the neutron bomb. The race model doesn't explain it. It's a chase. As the Soviets said just several years ago, don't build a neutron bomb. If you build it, then we will have to build it. Don't build the MX. If you do that, we will escalate on our ICBMs. That's hardly a race. That's more of a chase. The other side asking that this escalation not take place, and then when the escalation does, it reluctantly moves on and enters it also. Reluctantly, I say, because the arms race has had a tremendous damaging effect on the Soviet economy. Every time they have to build another tank, that's one less subway car for their subways. In the USSR, any city that reaches 1 million people gets a new subway built in it. Every new missile means that much less quality consumer goods. It also, by the way, has the same drain on our country, but it's not as evident given the kind of country it is. The arms race here, the defense spending is, of course, an enormous shot in the arm to the owning class in terms of profits, guaranteed cost overruns, fat contracts, and so forth. The Soviet Union has a capital shortage, unlike the U.S., which has a capital surplus, and so therefore this deprivation. The Soviet Union has a labor shortage, unlike the U.S., where there are 20 million people underemployed. It has a smaller industrial base, so to match us, that's a greater drain on it. It has scientists who would prefer working in the civilian sector because their work in the military sector remains anonymous. Managers who would have management jobs in the civilian sector. In short, it has a number of rational reasons why it would like to diminish the arms race. As Gorbachev has said again and again, we have a lot of building in our own country. We have never had a normal year in our history. We have had foreign invasion, revolution, invasion again, forced collectivization, et cetera, armaments race, and we would like to have some normal years. Again, not necessarily love, but something much stronger, which is self-interest. So I would argue that Soviet escalations have been mostly reactive and defensive to U.S. escalations. This is true also if you look at the Soviet Navy. It has, until very recently, no aircraft carriers for attack and amphibian actions. It now has one. It's had a few mini carriers. The Soviet fleet is built almost entirely to tracking the U.S. fleet, to see where it's going. Soviet interest in disarmament is reflected in the proposals that they have made. You could say, well, words are cheap. I want to see actions. First of all,
Like
words
how I can't
aren't
tell.
cheap. Words count too. What a nation
Done or
says
not.
is reflective of what it's doing. But actual moves also been taken. For instance, one, the Soviets proposed the eventual disbanding of NATO and Warsaw Pact armies. A proposal, gradual, mutual.
All right, thanks, Michael. All right. Yeah, I'm trying my best. I don't know. Oh, yeah, I clicked the 3-minute ads. But it doesn't like count down. They don't make it easy to see. All right. I'm going to get back to this. I'm really getting a lot out of this. I like this talk. This shit is right up our alley over here. So I'm going to get back to this. Chat, please support the channel. If it's within your means, love your face. You got a couple bucks laying around? I'd appreciate it very much. Figure it out, that guy. We'll figure it out.
That he shouldn't have even apologized to begin with, and then that he messed up for apologizing and even acknowledging any of this stuff. And the guy who starts Dark Nafo is literally this Polish like psychopath gore artist. I mean, a lot of this, I don't know that we could even show some of this stuff on screen. Like, he's clearly working in some cases from a reference of like presumably a
What does that mean? Gift cards to what?
Russian soldier who's like had their face bashed in, and he's making these crazy psychotic captions like, you know, feed me blood or whatever, and saying, you know, kind of like some of these LaRouche people that maybe we'll come to. One, they both think that like war crimes are based. That's what the Dark Nafo thing is about. And then so one of these founders of Nafo makes a post saying, after, you know, this whole.
So at this point, when you find out that, and if you're a public figure, yo, all right, I think I get it. It's these people willing to embrace the bombing of the bridge, the people who are posting on Maine, and they got these Nafo PFPs. Is this who we're talking about here?
Holocaust thread thing comes to light saying, hey, new Nafo people, Kama is our overlord. You can't talk shit about him. And
Deal.
And then, you know, a few people comment like, well, wait, I thought we're this decentralized movement. Like, I don't get why we're around.
Oh my God. I thought this was totally organic. Oh.
And that is so offensive that she now leaves Nafo and then joins Dark Nafo, which is this extremist like faction. But now it's become this other thing where Dark Nafo means getting rid of your Shiba Inu profile. And I mean,
here's a Dark Nafo meme.
Wait, what?
It has like this big buff dog here, and it says,
getting rid of it?
kill all Moskols, which is like a slur for Russians. So kill all Russians, shit on their.
I've never seen that term before. Moskols? The fuck?
Their corpses, laugh about it. That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and there's another.
I'm trying to piece this together here.
In there somewhere, someone they've identified as a Russian troll. They go through their profile and see that the guy, he has a cat that died, and so they take the cat and make it into a Nafo dog and start spamming him with.
You don't do that. You don't do that. You simply don't do that. And if you do, that means you're a fucking sicko. And what you stand for is bullshit and dumb. And you're a bad, dumb person if you would do something like that.
Pictures of his dead cat, and this is like a Dark Nafo. This is, I think they're like saying, oh, I got Dark Nafo on him or something. and
Desperate.
it's they're being complete trolls. It's almost like you don't want to give them attention because it just
You have to give them. Oh my God, it's so hard because you have to give them attention, but the minimum amount. And how do you dial that in? I don't know. There's fucking no test for that. There's no science to it.
gives them oxygen.
Oh,
And yet
fuck.
they're kind of been having.
This is the thing about dangerous ideologies. It's just like, how do you dial this in? This is hard. I don't know.
A meltdown over all this, and there's all this miscellaneous drama of Nafo.
I just want to tell my friends how to like support my friends and be like, hey y'all, you should like buy their t-shirts and merch and keep their content alive, but instead I'm like so busy teaching everyone about these literal Nazis.
People saying, I can't take it anymore. All this infighting and all this drama, it's all too much. Even Adam Kinzinger, the Nafo congressman, is he was acknowledging it from
Illinois.
Nafo people, calm down, we'll get through this. Try not to don't succumb to the infighting, and so
it's not infighting if they want to support NATO.
This has really taken a toll on them.
They're not.
This is I want to stress this point. Yeah. This is a sitting U.S. Congressman, Adam Kinzinger, who's become
I'm doing a really bad job of not interrupting.
A close friend of the CIA. He's always pushing their line and everything. He's extremely anti-Russian, very pro-war. And he changed his profile photo to Nafo, and he constantly posts Nafo memes every single day. So this is active promotion by sitting U.S. Congress people of this movement that was founded by a Nazi. And they're like, don't turn on each other. This is a crisis. We'll get over it. Just accept the fact that you're involved in a campaign founded by a Nazi and deny it.
Yeah, and he went further than that too, because one of the they call them the forgers, the people who make the Shiba Inu pictures. And so one of the top forgers makes a post, saying, we got to have commas back or whatever. And Kinzinger comments to the effect of, guys, stop. You're bringing, this, you're all bringing attention to this by, yourselves. And, let's just, this isn't, no one's making a big deal about this. So let's just move on. And then someone else comments, oh, it's a flex, comma is unbreakable. And then Kinzinger likes that comment. So, and this is the guy who
Kinzinger, who's now, his name is now Adam Kinzinger #fella.
He's gone through
Nafo is now part of his name.
Fellas. Yeah, no, and this is the guy who said that Ilhan Omar needs to be stripped of her committee assignments for saying it's all about the Benjamins, and is also tried to be the leading anti-Trump Republican when it comes to January 6th, and he's being this anti-Trump Republican, he realizes he's not going to get reelected, and so he's leaving Congress, which I think is part of what's given him this permission to just become completely unhinged. I mean, there's no one I don't think in Washington who has been as a cheerleader for World War III than him. Maybe Paul Massaro. I don't even want to talk about him, but Kinzinger is, in the wake of January 6th, that he's dedicating his career to fighting far right extremism, and yet when it comes to this, he wants nothing to do with it. Another, Alexander Reed Ross, who's supposed to be an expert on far right terrorism, and his whole thing is
and he works at a neoconservative think tank alongside former CIA agents, alongside former FBI and police officers, and he claims to be this anarchist researcher who's quite literally working alongside spooks.
His whole thesis is that we're the real fascists, and yet his response to this was, if Shiba Inus have anything to do with you supporting genocide, then you need to throw your computer in a vat. And then someone else was made a tweet about what's his name, Lebanese a guy Oz K.
Chatterjee.
Yeah,
who's a neocon, very pro-war. He used to write. He's like from this Vice hipster pipeline to Vice hip.
Oh my God, Vice is so complicit in Empire's narratives.
To neocon pipeline. He used to do articles for Vice where like he took Viagra and like wrote this article about like boner pills and like using glasses I can't see and all this like ridiculous stuff. And now he's just like a full-on pro-war, bloodthirsty neocon.
Well, someone was making the point that he, being someone who's so concerned about like anti-Semitism in the Labor Party, is perfectly okay with this guy because his Nafo fellow was made by Comma, and he's made comments like, "Oh, if you want a fellow, you got to go to Comma. He's your man." And so someone, I think from Progressive International, made a post about this hypocrisy on his part, and Alexander Reed Ross responds something to the effect of like, "Are you suggesting that everyone with a Shiba Inu profile is a Nazi, is part of some Nazi psychological operation?" Like that's his only response to this is to like, I'm the problem for bringing attention to this. So, I mean, I think I tried to, I was calling it #NafoGate, and I was naive to think that might actually become something. But for me, NafoGate is all these people just showing their asses on, that they have to ignore this and dismiss it and minimize it and act like it's nothing. But, like with this, this crazy person who attacked Nancy Pelosi's husband, and they're going through all his social media posts of
another full-on Nazi, literal Nazi.
Yeah, and it's more extreme than in some cases in this Nafo guy, but like it reminded me of this thread. It's like this looks like the kind of thread that will be relevant again one day when someone goes out and starts shooting people. Especially the dark Nafo person I was talking about. I mean, it's truly psychopathic stuff, and he's part of that like community. So it's all just super sick and twisted, and yeah, I wanted to write some follow-up stuff about this, but the fact that like no like mainstream journalist is willing to write some kind of follow-up about it. I mean, there was even a new since this stuff have come out, there have been even more puff pieces that credit this guy Comma as the founder, and they have only good things to say about him and Nafo and how it's the future of information war. I mean,
wait to hear about Werner von Braun. Wait to hear about Werner von Braun and NASA, right? Like, this isn't necessarily new. Like, just erasing this Nazi history and praising some of these people, but it is definitely extremely hypocritical. Sorry, I cut you off there. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, even like the founder of Bellingcat is now just he was at some conference and gave a shout out to Nafo for building this pro-Ukraine community. And the whole thing that everyone loves Nafo is that they're going to win the information war. And it's like, wow, how?
Oh, he called out Bellingcat.
How genius is this? That to fight the information war against Russia's information war about denazifying Ukraine, which is really
what did he say?
This Nazi history and praising some of these people, but it is definitely extremely hypocritical. Sorry, I cut you off there. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, even like the founder of Bellingcat is now just he was at some conference and gave a shout out to Nafo for building this pro-Ukraine community. And
oh my God, motherfuckers. I'm telling y'all, when yo, there was a time I could not pick out Ukraine on a map, and that was February. Okay, I'm one of those people. I'll admit, it was since then that I would dig the fuck down into all of this. Okay, and just say
history and praising some of these people, but it is definitely extremely not NASA, right? Like, this is
I lost my train of thought.
Necessarily new, like just erasing this Nazi history and praising some of these people, but it is definitely extremely hypocritical. Sorry, I cut you off there. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, even like the founder of Bellingcat is now just
Bellingcat. Okay. fuck. I was like, I was doing the thing that I do all the time, which is like, let's figure out what's going on here, because I don't know. I simply don't, you know? Like most people in the Imperial Corps were propagandized to the nth degree. Right? And I'm like, I'm trying to figure this out. Because I have no idea. I had no idea what was going on in Ukraine. And I had to admit it to myself. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. Rayback, love your face. I had to admit it. I had to level up my understanding, my material understanding. You know what I mean? And it was hard. It was like tricky to, you know, wade through all the imperial propaganda. It's very hard. It's not easy. Excuse me. To pierce the imperial veil. It is not easy. But when you do it, you don't want to stop. It's the best. Right? Isn't that sick? When you pierce the imperial veil, you've not done it. You haven't finished the job. In terms of your education, you turning into a revolutionary, you've not done it. There's a lot of propaganda, a lot of that veil covering, filtering your view of reality. It is not easy to pierce the imperial veil. But when you do, I believe you're gonna like it. You're gonna like it a lot. You're gonna want to do more of it. I'll take 2, please. Oh, 2's not enough. I'll take 4. Keep doubling up. Okay, exponentially. You're gonna love it. So, keep figuring it out, because eventually you'll get to the point where you hear people that you trust. You're like, oh, these are fucking trustable people. I love me some Bellingcat, because it makes me feel like I'm an understander. And then you hit a wall. You keep listening to the content and you don't feel smarter, you start feeling dumber. And you know the difference because you watch mine channel.
He was at some conference and gave.
Adam Moon, you're new to the conversation. I'm going to ask that you try to do your best to not dominate my chat. Learn to fit in to the conversation.
Give a shout out to Nafo for building this pro-Ukraine community. And
you're like the only person in my chat right now, based on pure posts.
The whole thing that everyone loves Nafo is that they're going to win the information war. And it's like, wow, how genius is this? That to fight the information war against Russia's information war about denazifying Ukraine, which is really, if anything, just Nazifying the country more than ever before. I mean, true, because if anything, I think it's like 2014, Maidan, all that facilitated the Banderization of Ukraine. And now
I'm here.
This invasion is, I think, facilitating the actual Nazification of the country. You know, now Azov and all those people are truly considered heroes. And, you know, it's truly like the best thing that's ever happened.
Heroes of Mariupol.
This invasion, in terms of their prestige and propaganda and everything. But sorry, I got off track.
I'm gonna give you some time off.
Oh yeah, so to fight this propaganda about, you know, Zelensky is leading a Nazi regime and so on and so forth, the West and NATO or wherever says, okay, we got to fight this by creating this internet army led by a Nazi and full of crazy people that will need to be denazified at some point. If, you know, like it's just insane. I mean, it's really, I mean, more Also, about
That's
this guy,
true.
Kama, he works for St. Javelin, which is officially now the parent company of Nafo, this thing that's supposedly totally decentralized
What does
and
that
has no
mean,
real
though?
leadership. He works full time for the official parent company, which is then, as I mentioned, tied to Georgian Legion and Ukrainian World Congress and all this stuff. So he is basically, if they have a leader, it is him, and he's not officially like president of NAFO, but I mean, the fact that
Is that right? That sounds true.
the way that they have all doubled down and rallied behind this guy is almost more incriminating, or I think it's more incriminating than his Twitter thread itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yo, their willingness to not back down. They're like, oh, I'm gonna keep using the meme. I'm gonna keep using the PFP that they made for me. Like, what the fuck? What does that mean?
this again,
That's
you said
huge
you don't
to
know how
me.
organic it is. I mean, it's at the very least, even if it wasn't directly created by like the CIA or the Pentagon or whatever, I think that's a possibility. But even if it wasn't, well, it was created by this guy, this Nazi. But like even if
what
it
are they signaling to who?
wasn't from the very beginning promoted by like the Pentagon or CIA, at the very least, they later joined on and have been openly promoting it. Here is an official verified Twitter account from the U.S. military, the U.S. military's cyber brigade, and they're promoting NAFO openly. So even if they didn't have a hand directly in helping to popularize it, they're promoting it now. And even more incriminating, here is the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, the official verified Twitter account, saying, "We usually express gratitude to our international partners for the security assistance, but today we want to give a shout out to a unique entity, North Atlantic Fellas Organization. Thanks for your fierce fight against Kremlin's propaganda and trolls." Now that's the irony of the century. Trolls. I mean, anyone who said a mild critical word about far-right groups in Ukraine, or who's called for a peaceful settlement and diplomacy and the end of Western billions of dollars of weapons flooding into Ukraine, you know that if you say a single critical word, you're flooded with dozens of trolls, of NAFO trolls. And yet they talk about Kremlin trolls. So
also the defense minister of Ukraine, Kama, made his fella. Like there's a big win for that's really helping you to win the information war, is to have the defense minister of Ukraine have a fella made by this, guy who I think it's totally fair to call him a Nazi, So yeah, it's the biggest shooting. It's like the information warriors could not have shot themselves in the foot more. I mean, if there was a genius Russian psyop, this would be it, in terms. Like, that's my favorite conspiracy theory now, is that NAFO is actually a Russian operation to, I mean, I don't think this, but that, to discredit support for NATO. That's actually something that Louise Mensch, she was propagating that conspiracy theory, because once they were coming out, that's what happens. All these people support NAFO until they're on the receiving end, including members of NAFO, because then they get in some little drama, minor disagreement about something, and then they get flooded with messages, often privately. And even then, it's like they're as ruthless as possible, even amongst themselves. I mean, there was an issue of one of them making death threats against another, and then they got kicked out of their Discord. And then there was a whole big thing about this is an information warfare within NAFO against other NAFO fellas.
Ash on Fash.
I really think this stuff is, it's they're bragging about how they're bigger and better than ever, but I think they're kind of spiraling. And hopefully this is, the beginning of the end. But
yeah, and this is actually a segue here, good segue. I think we're in like a very dangerous moment where it's very clear that the West is in a serious political and economic crisis. In Europe in particular, you have the rise of far-right groups largely because of the complete failure of these neoliberal centrist parties that have governed for decades and overseen austerity and declining living standards and cutting social programs and healthcare and education. And obviously in the US as well, you have the rise of these far-right groups. And there's a major crisis of institutional legitimacy. And of course, that provides opportunity for the left, but it also provides very fertile ground for the far right, for fascist extreme groups. And they are the ones who they have access to the media, unlike the left, which is always isolated from the media. They have billionaire oligarch supporters like Peter Thiel and others. They have mainstream political parties like the Republican Party, or in Europe, there are far-right parties that are mainstream, and they're ascendant. They're on the rise. And you get this false dichotomy, right, where anyone who criticizes the NATO proxy war in Ukraine, in which NATO is essentially using Ukrainians as cannon fodder in this proxy war against Russia, as U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said, to weaken Russia, that if you criticize this war, then the liberals accuse you of being like a Trump supporter or far right. And so what's happened is that there's this demonization of the anti-war movement and anyone who calls for diplomacy. We saw this disgraceful capitulation by the 30 members of the Democratic Party of the Progressive Caucus who signed this very mainstream, very milquetoast letter calling basically for mild diplomacy. I mean, but it was couched in all of this, vociferous condemnation of Russia and call for military support for Ukraine. It was the most milquetoast possible call for diplomacy. And even now, calling for diplomacy is seen as capitulation. And even worse, it's being portrayed as like supporting the far right. So you see this false dichotomy between the neoliberal center and the far right. And this has really pushed politics further and further to the right everywhere, pushed, liberals more and more to the right as well, in openly calling for war and sending more weapons and opposing diplomacy. And then throwing into this disastrous mix, you have these far right groups like this cult of LaRouche, Lyndon LaRouche, who himself was a fascist. I did a separate episode with friend Marlon Edinger talking about Lyndon LaRouche and his work with neo-Nazi groups and the KKK.
Damn it. Like, Ben does great content. We're going to have to watch that too.
And white supremacists in the U.S. He also told his cult followers to go beat up communists with nunchucks. I mean, this guy is a fascist. I mean, he died 2 years ago, but 3 years ago now. But his cult is still influential. And now you see some members of his cult have protested members of the squad, right? Like these social democrats in the Democratic Party, like AOC. And they criticized her rightfully for supporting this proxy war and not calling for diplomacy. But then the fact that the people criticizing her are themselves from this far right cult, it only further demonizes the anti-war movement. It further, divides the anti-war movement. So you have done a good service in documenting who this group is, this LaRouche cult, and the irony that this LaRouche cult itself, Lyndon LaRouche, has a history of supporting Ukrainian Nazis, because LaRouche was viciously anti-communist against the Soviet Union. So you just published this article at your Medium blog, which is Robeson, medium.com. I have the link in the description below. And your article is called LaRouche's Ukrainian Nazi Legacy, Hypocrisy of LaRoucheite Efforts to Lead Anti-War Movement. I think this, I have a separate video on this. I've said a lot about it. I won't relitigate it, but I think this is extremely suspicious that the anti-war movement in the U.S., which has always been targeted by U.S. police agencies and spies for destabilization and infiltration, it's very strange and suspicious that these LaRoucheites from this cult that has a long history of being linked to intelligence agencies are now disrupting the anti-war movement. Talk about this article.
Oh, shit. I was like watching this and I was trying to read Moss's reactions to this. The guy's already done a huge bit on LaRouche. This guy's on everything.
That you did here about LaRouche's Ukrainian Nazi legacy and why people should know about this, why this is important today.
Well, first of all, I called the introduction concern troll, and I think that's really what they're doing with going after the squad members. because why are they targeting the squad members in particular? Because their whole thing is about green fascism, and they're going after the people who support the Green New Deal, because apparently the Larushites are like the only people on Earth who are still threatened by the concept of the Green New Deal. And
which Joe Biden has not made a single mention of. Like, it's never going to happen under Biden, but
yeah,
that's the real threat. And by the way, I should point out, sorry to cut you off, but
no.
When they say green fascism, they don't mean like there is an actual green fascism. Like, there are fascists who say, you know, we need to like kill all the refugees and all this stuff and whatever. But when they say green fascism, they mean anyone who acknowledges climate change is real, because they think it's all part of a depopulation plot, because anyone who doesn't support 12 trillion human beings on Earth and using coal-powered plants and massive industrialization, if you believe that climate change is real, then you're a Malthusian and you're a fascist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, before getting further into that, I mean, it's like, I understand why people, especially people who don't know about LaRouche and their cult, because it's pretty obscure these days. You understandably, you know, it's understandable if you assume that they just aren't around anymore. Kind of like I thought that about the OUNB. And like the OUNB, their cult lives on past the death of their cult leader. And
all it takes is money.
In some ways, it really takes off even more so after they've, you know, been able to ditch that baggage and can, you know, kind of claim they can like sort of reinvent themselves a bit. And but I understand the anger and the hypocrisy, of course, with, you know, the Democrats, and people are just so, there's no, you know, aside from like what Code Pink and, you know, some other organizations, there's no like anti-war movement in this country. And so I think people are hoping that these LaRouchites, whether or not they realize that they're LaRouchites, will inspire other people to do this, to go up to, you know, confront Democrats and other Congress people and people in government about, you know, the U.S. role in this extremely dangerous conflict. And, but now they're just setting it up so that if anyone else follows in their footsteps, you know, all the Congress people who are getting protests in that way are all just going to assume they're all LaRouchites, you know? And so, and unfortunately, like AOC and Ilhan Omar have reverted to, you know, describing them as like Russian disinformation artists. Although really, I mean, the LaRouche movement is a very homegrown fascist. I mean, there's the classic book on LaRouche by Dennis King called LaRouche and the New American Fascism. So yes, they basically are cheerleading Russia in this conflict, but they're not. I mean, this is a homegrown movement. And but aside from that, I think the thing that's one of the things that's very distressing about the capitulation of these progressive Democrats is that now they've even bought into this false dichotomy that you either have to support complete 100% Ukrainian victory, or
squad, dude.
You know, anything less than that is you're advocating for Ukraine to surrender.
The bomb squad.
The LaRouche people, well, in particular, Diane Saar, who kind of orchestrated these stunts targeting AOC and others in New York specifically, 2 days after Russia invaded Ukraine, she literally tweeted, Zelensky should surrender. So, you know, they're just the caricature of what, you know, people try to pick the anti-war movement as. Meanwhile, you know, if you say we should support some kind of diplomacy, and so this doesn't spiral out into nuclear Armageddon, you'll be accused of advocating or supporting the genocide of Ukrainians. And yet it's perfectly okay to say, you know, on any mainstream platform or whatever, that Ukraine should fight to the last Ukrainian rather than surrender an inch of its territory. So it's perfectly okay to say 40 million Ukrainians, an inch of dirt. 40 million Ukrainians, an inch of dirt. Let's go with the inch of dirt. That's more important. And that's not advocating for genocide of Ukrainians or anti-Ukrainian in nature. But, you know, because there's also this idea that if there's going to be any negotiated settlement, that Ukraine will have to make all the concessions. Why can't the United States make the concessions? You think Putin wouldn't pull out of Ukraine if we said we abolish NATO, or, you know, something like to, you know, alleviate the tensions that have been building for years between Russia and the United States? Or we said we want to negotiate arms control, or we're going to maybe acknowledge that the Soviet Union won World War II. Like, there's just so many things concessions that the United States could make. That I don't really buy into this argument that if there's going to be diplomacy, that Ukraine has to basically surrender. It's this, and yet the LaRouche people, getting back to that, they basically support this dichotomy that one side has to completely like dominate the other. And there was Marlon Ettinger, who you mentioned. He did a thing with TrueAnon, and unfortunately, I haven't listened to your interview.
Oh shit!
With him, but I did listen to TrueAnon, so I don't know if he talked about this on Multipolar.
Am I going to see them tomorrow?
Also, but he was saying that he was speaking with Jackson Hinkle, who's like now he's this Twitch streamer who's now involved in the.
Oh, that is so cringe. Streaming on Twitch.
You don't even want to talk about this stuff because it's so stupid, but MAGA communism and the LaRouche movement, now he's been sucked into that as like one of their spokespeople. And he was talking to him at this conference that they had 2 days after the AOC stunt, which kind of sheds light on the purpose of that. It was a publicity stunt to advertise their conference, which was called Build the New Paradigm, Defeat Green Fascism. And but so he was talking to Hinkle, and Hinkle's going on about, and he's standing there next to Nick Brana, head of Movement for People's Party, and other guys, and they're all being like, yeah, Russia, this, basically saying that Russian war crimes are based, and this Russian general who's called the cannibal is so based because he doesn't believe in the surgical strike BS. He just goes in and like wants to blow everything up.
Bad.
So, that's not anti-war. That's pro-war. That's but to get into the hypocrisy, really, of the LaRoucheite movement claiming to be so interested about Banderites and Ukrainian neo-Nazis. Actually, let me just back up a little bit.
I love them. I love when people know when to back up. That's hard.
Their whole thing, what this really comes out of, their concern about neo-Nazis in Ukraine, is all to bolster their efforts to depict Obama as a Nazi tyrant. And one of the things they were known for when Obama was president was this image of Obama with a Hitler mustache. And
no, they're like, oh, we don't like Nazis, and then not that long. Wait, this is LaRouche?
Yeah, right there. And so there's Diane Saar.
Let me track this.
Occupy Wall Street. Again, because they have to co-opt, they just infiltrate and co-opt and lie and everything. That's their MO. They tried to co-opt Occupy Wall Street, and they're tabling with these Obama's Hitler images. And so when
sorry to cut you off, but we should point out that LaRouche himself ran for many years for president as a perennial, gadfly candidate, and he ran as a Democrat. And the irony is that around the time of the Obama administration, the LaRouche cult, they kind of made a strategic decision to switch to the Republicans, and now they support the Republicans. I mean, they still try to run candidates as independents, but for the most part, during and after Obama, they started supporting Republicans, and they were very pro-Trump.
Yeah, they were warning. I mean, that's also, they were warning about a coup against Trump, like almost as soon as he took office, and they were putting out things saying jail Obama and Soros for treason because they're trying to organize another Nazi color revolution, but against Trump, because that's this is what this is all about. Because it's all, and you see people like Lee Stranahan and Jack Posobiec, or however you say it, and these right wingers who ostensibly are concerned about Democrats supporting their whole thing is just to try to place this on the Democratic Party, and it's a narrative that's appealing. I know from experience as a left winger, it's also appealing to point out that the Democrats support neo-Nazis in Ukraine.
That's fun,
but it's
good.
It's a slippery slope because they're, kind of like with Chrystia Freeland, all the attention's on Chrystia Freeland, Nazi grandfather. But meanwhile, the Conservative Party is like much more supportive and close to the actual OUNB and whatnot. So,
yeah, I mean, it's become, I talk about this a lot. It's become like a reverse lesser evilism, where, for years, the argument was you always have to support the Democrat who's the lesser evil. But now they say the Republicans, the far right Republicans, are the lesser evil. Trump is supposedly the lesser evil, ignoring the fact that when Trump was president, and he appointed John Bolton, arch neocon, as his national security advisor, the U.S. unilaterally withdrew from the INF Treaty, the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, which is what set the stage for this new escalation of the war in Ukraine, because it said that Ukraine could host intermediate range ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads aimed at Moscow. So it was Trump that actually sabotaged the architecture of the arms deals with Russia that prevented the escalation of the war. Obviously, the Democrats bear responsibility as well, but it was also Trump who sent so-called lethal military aid that even Obama wouldn't send. He sent so-called non-lethal military aid, which is, propaganda. It's like officer-involved shooting or whatever. But
subsidized.
The point is that the Trump administration sent military equipment and weapons to Ukraine that even Obama wouldn't send. And yet we're told that supposedly Trump is the anti-war alternative, ignoring that, he murdered Qasem Soleimani, one of the top officials in the Iranian government. He escalated the war in Afghanistan. He escalated the war in Yemen. He started a war in Venezuela, basically. So,
the Yemen deep dive.
It's preposterous. But that's the argument they use. And again, I understand why it's appealing to people, because it is true.
I'm so exhausted. I need a nap.
True that the Democrats are warmongers as well. But that doesn't mean the Republicans are any less warmongers.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous to try to, pin this all on the Democrats and let the Republicans off the hook. But that is kind of what the LaRouchites are going for, because they want...
Oh, it's so silly.
To draw people away from the left or from the Democratic Party and draw them into their cult. And
no.
For me,
no.
I was in 7th grade when Obama was elected, and I didn't really know anything, but I thought Obama was gonna
When was Obama elected? 2012? No. 2008. 2008? 2008. Hey guys. Thank you, Amber. Welcome in. What did you just say?
Be Bernie. For me, I was in 7th grade when Obama was elected.
All right. When you're in 7th grade, you're like, what, 13? Wait, no. 12? 11? Wait, where am I? You're maybe like 12. You're in the 7th grade and Obama's elected. How old is he? I'm trying to figure this out. He's 22? Wait. Oh, shit, man. 29? Where are we?
And I didn't really know anything, but I thought Obama was going to be Bernie Sanders on steroids. I thought he was going to end the wars and end global hunger and all this stuff. I don't know where I got this.
I sort of thought that too.
This idea. I mean, I guess just, change, hope and change.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, you were in 7th grade.
He seemed like a real nice guy.
Yeah. But, okay. But then I was in high school when the Maidan happens, and I was smoking a lot of weed in those days. I'm a little fuzzy on the chronology of stuff, or where I was.
That's hilarious.
That and what I was thinking. But
I'll smoke
for me, it really shattered a lot for me, and I think was kind of radicalizing this idea that Obama would then orchestrate a neo-Nazi coup in Ukraine, and I'm kind of agnostic about the role of Obama, and I'm also, and
he didn't stop it.
I won't go down that whole rabbit hole, but
I mean, I see what you're saying.
I feel like I can hang out with Moss forever.
For people who don't know,
oh my God. Oh, this is like dream blunt rotation. I'm dying over here.
Victoria Nuland, this neoconservative who's now third in the command of the State Department. I mean, she clearly knew about the coup. She was involved. But whether or not Obama personally approved it or whatever, I mean, these conversations are hard to have because, of course, the nature.
Obama cared less and less and less and less. It is so hard to believe that he's not. He's like an obstruction to U.S. empire.
The very nature of covert operations and coups is that they're covert, right? And even like the details of the 1953 coup in Iran and 54 coup in Guatemala and 73 coup in Chile, like we still don't even know all of the exact details about those coups. Like the U.S. was involved in the Maidan coup, but whether or not it was personally approved by Obama, well, we never know.
Well, but also like Obama was on CNN and he said that, admitted that the U.S. had brokered a deal to end the protests and basically, hold early elections and to, try to, what's the word? To like, negotiate some kind of transition away from Yanukovych and to end things peacefully. And the like right sector and the other extremists involved didn't accept that. And then you have this massacre, the snipers massacre, which again, it's like one of those things you're not allowed to talk about. But
How many people died? I don't think I'm close to those details. In my brain, it's like there were snipers and some people, like I have no idea. What's the scale of death? What happened? 100? Get the fuck out of here. What? That is a ton of people.
I mean, everyone should read Ivan Kopchanovsky's essay, and he's done a lot of work on.
That's sweet of you. Did someone make a video? Because I don't know how to read.
This massacre, and it was very blatantly a false flag, which, then is what led to the overthrow or the government, or rather what led to Yanukovych fleeing the country. And so, I don't know that Obama wanted a coup, but, also he was Joe Biden was his point person on Ukraine, and who was one of his point people on Ukraine was Michael Carpenter, who is, he was I think he was Tony Blinken's successor as the managing director of the Penn Biden Center for Global Diplomacy.
Oh my God, there's so much happening here. I got to dig into this.
And, Robbie Martin, who you had on recently, I think maybe yesterday, the day before, tweeted a screenshot of an interview he did or he spoke to Robert Kagan, who that's Newman's husband, right?
Yeah. He spoke to Robert Kagan?
But
yeah. Victoria Nuland's husband is the arch neocon Robert Kagan.
We had Robbie on my channel.
One of the co-founders of the Project for the New American Century.
Yeah, and he was basically mocking Obama's fear of World War III, and he was saying that Obama took the position that I don't want a World War III over Ukraine, and that Ukraine is part of Russia's sphere of influence, or at least it's much more important to them than it is.
Oh my God, we have to rewatch the Robbie Martin film.
To us, so it doesn't make sense to escalate because we can't. They're willing to go further than we are, or at least than Obama was. And the Biden administration, people who staffed the Biden administration, were part of the minority of the Obama administration on that issue. They wanted to arm Ukraine. Michael Carpenter, speaking to the Center for U.S.-Ukraine Relations, a conference, which is a straight-up OUNB front.
Oh my God. I've not asked myself the question, is Biden's administration more or less neoconservative than Obama's? And I think I'm understanding the answer as I ask it.
We really have time to get into that, but it's just a fact. Carpenter is talking about, he kind of corrected himself or stopped himself from straight up saying that the Obama administration as a whole was afraid of its own shadow. He then corrected himself to say certain people, but I think it's pretty clear he included Obama in that group of people. So
what does that mean?
So I just think, and apparently now Obama was around the time that the Progressive Caucus put out this letter, Obama was basically saying the same thing, that what's so concerning is that the communications between Russia and the United States are at its lowest point, since the height of the Cold War. And so is Obama a Putin puppet? Well, according to Ukrainian nationalists, kind of, yeah. And but now everyone's like a Banderite, now everyone takes this position that, if you the only way to end the war is to escalate it further. You know, the ABN that we mentioned at the beginning, the Anti-Bolshevik Bloc of Nations, which is led by the OUNB, they were preaching literally saying that World War III was inevitable throughout much of the Cold War. And then maybe around the second half of the Cold War, they started to say, oh, well, actually supporting us is the only alternative to nuclear war. And, you know, now it's like Paul Massaro, this, you know, Nafo celebrity guy who's an advisor to the, what is it, OSCE? To the Helsinki Commission, which is a government agency created by Congress. And so he's an advisor to those members of Congress who are involved in the Helsinki Commission. You know, basically just taking these extreme positions that, you know, the only way to end the war is complete, total Ukrainian victory, and that you just got to keep going further and further and further. And that, you know, if you have any reservations about this, then you're just, you know, you're a fool. And, you know, I mean, and then you see, going back to Nafo, like some of the Nafo people are very explicit. They want NATO to get involved in this, and they basically want World War III. And one of the Nafo founders, she had a tweet saying, well, we're all going to die one day, so just suck it up, you know?
So let's all die now.
Yeah, like might as well just get it over with. And there is, and again, the LaRouche people too are extremely nihilistic about all this stuff, as Marlon Ettinger was talking about. And, or as he witnessed, that was his impression from going to this conference. And, but yeah, I mean, just to briefly, because I don't know how much longer we're going to go here, but so, okay. I don't know, people maybe have noticed my real life Ukraine emoji, but this is a lot of my files on the history of this Ukraine Nazi collaborator stuff. And a lot of this is CIA files, which I would not have access to were it not for the War Crimes Disclosure Act. Also, the LaRouche people will not be able to write about OUNB without the War Crimes Disclosure Act passed in 1998. Well, that was only possible thanks to Congresswoman Elizabeth Holtzman, who was kind of basically like the AOC of her day. And she rose to prominence as she was on the House committee for the Watergate investigations. And she was, you know, fresh into Congress, would go further and grilling people. I think, you know, she was grilled the Vice President, Gerald Ford, about what kind of deal he was, I guess he was the president at that point, and grilling him about whether he made some kind of deal with Nixon in order to pardon him and whatever. So, but also that year, her first year in Congress, her second year, learns that that the United States government has a list of Nazi war criminals living in the United States, and no one's doing anything about it. And then she dedicated the rest of her political career to what she called undoing that situation. And she led the pressure campaign that led the Department of Justice to create the Office of...
Oh my God. Oh my God. Who the fuck is he talking about? A literal Nazi hunter. Oh my God. I could bathe in these particles all day.
Of special investigations to hunt these Nazi war criminals. Well, incidentally, they in large part went after Ukrainians. Some of the first people they prosecuted, I think, were actually even disproportionately Ukrainian. And so LaRouche was, you know, Executive Intelligence Review, his magazine, was accusing Elizabeth Holtzman of creating this thing to run dirty tricks against the intelligence community. And of course, LaRouche himself, because it's everything is going to be about LaRouche. And so this was all just a cover to go after. LaRouche. And so basically the big hypocrisy is that the LaRouche people were, they went crazy over this Nazi hunting arm of the US government. And they went so far as to declare John Demjanjuk, you can watch a thing on Netflix about him, The Devil Next Door, that he was completely innocent. He was a guard at a death camp in Sobibor. At the time, he was thought to be this infamous guard at Treblinka, a different extermination camp. But, you know, they didn't just, they were they insisted on his complete innocence and that this was all a setup by, the British Zionist powers that be, and
Is he talking about a show?
it's all a plot against America, blah 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 blah. And the rhetoric of the LaRouche people and the OUNB people, Banderites and other Ukrainian nationalists, was largely identical, except for the whole thing about it being a British conspiracy.
Well, did he mention a show?
Otherwise,
I want to watch it.
Ukrainian nationalist rants could have been lifted straight from the pages of LaRouche's magazine. And so then even this goes on for years. And so they mobilize to defeat Elizabeth Holtzman when she runs for Senate. And so with their help,
we have to do a deep dive on Elizabeth Holtzman.
This other guy squeaks through, Republican candidate Alphonse D'Amato. And what does he do as a first-year congressman? He's not concerned about a list of Nazi collaborators or Watergate or anything like that. He, his first-year congressman, introduces a resolution to declare June 30th Ukrainian Independence Day. June 30th, 1941, being the pro-Nazi proclamation of restoration of Ukrainian statehood declared by OUNB. And they tried to create a pro-Nazi puppet government in Ukraine, and the Nazis...
Fuck! I'm going to watch this again. I got to take notes. This is off the charts.
weren't going to have it because they weren't interested in any kind of independence for Ukraine, which kind of set off the conflict between Ukrainian nationalists and Nazi Germany. So basically, the Ukrainian nationalists, or OUN, they weren't really anti-Nazi as they now like to claim they were. Really, the Nazis were just extremely anti-Ukrainian. And, or at least the leadership, there were some who thought that was the key to winning the war, would be to, and so LaRouche actually ends up echoing that talking point made by certain Nazis and Ukrainian nationalists, that the Nazis would have won the war if only they had supported Ukrainian independence. And LaRouche even goes so far to say under the support of the Wehrmacht. And actually,
oh my God,
the branch of the Nazi Germany that was supporting the OUN was the military intelligence. So he might, I don't know if he, maybe he was onto something there, maybe knowingly or not. But then a couple of years later, EIR, Executive Intelligence Review, does
this is too much to handle.
Slava Stetsko.
This is too much to handle.
Who is at that point the leader.
This is what it's like when I'm talking to Karem and I'm like, slow down, I can't handle it.
Of the anti-Bolshevik bloc of nations and is a leader of the OUNB. She then creates the OUNB political party, which I mentioned earlier, that its paramilitary arm eventually goes off to do its own thing, and then 10 years ago or so created Right Sector. So, and then now, of course, after Maidan starts to happen, the LaRouche people are all concerned about OUNB and that the British sponsored the OUNB, which they did at the beginning of the Cold War. But
that's why these fucking weirdos are trying to infiltrate this community.
It's hypocritical because it's very
and they have been ever since I've been talking about the conflict there.
Transparently, it was all just about justifying and bolstering their campaign to depict Obama as the real Nazi and the Democrats as the real Nazis, because LaRouche, many people will call him a neo-Nazi cult leader. And so the LaRouche people are basically saying, just like Lee Stranahan and Jack Posobiec and all these other Republicans and right-wingers who claim to be concerned about Ukrainian Democrats supporting neo-Nazis in Ukraine, they're just saying, we're not the neo-Nazis, you're the neo-Nazis, which is now like what everyone's doing now, because if you support or if you say anything critical, you're basically, I've gotten used to this point to just being regularly accused of being a Russian neo-Nazi, for, I guess, the crime of maybe not being quite nuanced enough about Ukrainian Nazis or something, but I don't know, it's the LaRouche people, it's just so blatantly hypocritical that they now claim to care about supporting Nazis in Ukraine. They don't.
Yeah, I mean, given the history of LaRouche himself collaborating with white supremacists and the Ku Klux Klan and the American Nazis, I mean, it's ridiculous. But I mean, we should start wrapping up here because I know it's been longer than I had
I could listen to this all day.
Told you we would go, but one final thing I want to talk about, which is part of this like kind of mainstreamization of fascism, which is very concerning. I mean, in general, like in U.S. politics and European politics, fascism is just becoming completely mainstream. The Republican Party is basically a fascistic party. You have, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Steve King and these people who are just like straight up fascists. They call themselves like Christian nationalists, and they say Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization, and they spout white nationalist talking points. And meanwhile, like, it is true that there are Democrats who are supporting you.
What? The Schiller Institute Conference?
Ukrainian Nazis. And what I'll conclude here with is an article that you published over at your blog, which is mossrobeson.medium.com.
Wait, what am I missing here?
And this is from early October. It's titled, "Now All of You Are Azov. Ukrainian neo-Nazis tour the U.S." This is about a tour that the Azov fighters from this...
They were in Chicago.
Far-right, ultra-nationalist, fascist militia. They visited the U.S. They were invited to speak in Washington. So let's just conclude, going back to this topic of there is a real far-right fascist movement in Ukraine, and it actually is getting support from Western governments.
One point distinction that I think to make between Democrats.
It's like I got that that they were like I had like a vague understanding that these LaRouchites were like vaguely fascistic. But like this ties it together way too much.
Democrats and Republicans. I mean, it's not a perfect rule, but in large case, the Democrats that you see
them as some Nazis
getting too close with these people, it's largely because they live in districts with significant Ukrainian population, people who could potentially swing.
We all saw the video. Hanging out at the Madison Square Garden. It didn't go away, homies.
An election. The Republican, there's an image of showing the top members of Congress who are tweeting the most about Ukraine and Russia. And of course, top of the list is Adam Kinzinger. He's like the triple whammy. He lives in Chicago, which is like the biggest hotbed of Ukrainian nationalism in the country. And then the Nafo thing. So put those two together, and he tweets like twice as much about Ukraine than any other member of Congress, and basically cheerleading World War III. The top Democrat to tweet about Ukraine is Bill Pascrell, who I think there's a picture somewhere in that article, or otherwise, he's can be seen with one of these people from Azov. And years ago at another Ukrainian festival, he took a picture with someone from Right Sector USA. There was actually a short-lived U.S. branch of Right Sector, and the person I think even had a Right Sector shirt on.
What?
So it's not like it was just not like he could totally ignorant about it. And then I mean,
flipping out.
So the Democrats who there's like an explanation to this of electoral politics, whereas the Republicans who are all gung-ho about the far right in Ukraine and whatever, they're just, they think Russia is communist, and for them, a lot of this is just ideological. And so if anything, it's the Republicans who I think really ideologically support these people, and the Democrats, it's either playing politics, like.
I mean, I never lived in Chicago, but I lived in New York for several years, and in the East Village in Lower Manhattan, well before the Russian invasion. I mean, I haven't been back to the U.S. in a few years, but I remember, in like 2016, 2017, when there, in the early stages of this Ukraine proxy war going on in Donbass, I would see like a bunch of posters in the East Village, I think on like 6th and 7th Street, where you would have like these Azov posters and like portraying Putin as Hitler and all this. And there's like a Ukrainian nationalist bar over there that's pretty popular. So like these.
Do you remember which one you're talking about?
No,
Okay.
I'm not like a big bar guy, but it's
Yeah.
on like I think it's on like on 6th and Avenue A or First Ave or
Okay,
something
you're
like
talking
that.
about blue and gold.
No. There's another
Okay.
one. It's
Can you please specify your Ukrainian nationalist bar in New York?
I'll have to look it up. But yeah, I mean the point is that like I think that
Because I'm well aware. Motherfucker's done his fucking homework.
that area used to be called Little Ukraine.
Yeah,
But
it
anyway, the
still
point is that,
it's,
like-
it's much littler, but it's more
Yeah, I
little.
mean like there are these networks of Ukrainians, and I'm not saying every Ukrainian who lives in the US and Canada is a fascist. No, I'm not saying that. But it's true that there were a lot of these Ukrainian families who were former Nazi collaborators and ultranationalists who, after World War II, and especially during the first Cold War, they immigrated to the US. And
No.
their ancestors, you know, not just Chrystia Freeland, many others, they became involved in
Yo. Oh my God. I'm one of very few people that know that J.B. Pritzker came to Chicago as the, Russian tanks were rolling in late February. I actually do believe it was early March. There were these rallies or whatever at the Ukrainian church. Oh my God. No, that ain't it. This is it, but that ain't it. These pictures are limited. Oh. Never mind. Here's the deal. You could see a red and black flag right there by the tree. What's that flag? What you cannot see is behind his back left shoulder, back and to the left, back and to the left. There's another Banderite flag, homies. And it may be at this rally or the other one where there's literally a red and black OUNB flag with Stepan Bandera's his face like emblazoned on the flag. You know what I'm saying? It's like a design in the flag. I cannot pull it up in a quick way, but I did post about it at the time. Motherfuckers, I had no idea how deep it went. I had no idea. I was scraping the top of the iceberg at the time. I had no... That's the guy! That's the guy! That's him! That's him! That's the guy! This is the guy that was at the... Yeah. When the ass-off Nazis came to the U.S. Oh my God, dude. Did I just figure this out? Someone tell Moss. That's the guy. When the Azov guys were denazified from Ukraine, the Russians grabbed a bunch of them, and then it was about like 3-4 weeks ago they let them all a bunch of them go from Mariupol, I guess. And then they came to Chicago, and then they hang out with this guy with the hat. He thinks he's like I don't know, Indiana Jones or some shit. Do I have to show you this? Who knows what I'm saying right now? Who's tracking me? Who's not tracking me? Moss talked all about it on the Moss. Homies. You have no idea what I'm saying? Okay. All right. Okay. What's OSI? Okay. So if you don't know this, y'all, I need you to understand that, like, yo, I feel like I'm one of a few people that are, like, I don't know, obsessed with these fucking Nazis, you guys. They're flying under the radar. They came to the United States. They did a Nazi apologia tour. They met with over 50 people, 50 members of Congress. You guys, I'm telling you, like, this is off the charts. They visited like 4 or 5 different cities, including Chicago. They spoke to United States kids from the U.S. These are Nazis fucking indoctrinating kids. I don't know how to put it. This is not good. Okay? Oh, I'm going to do a Nazi salute. They're Nazis. They met with Tom Cotton. Tom Cotton? No, actually, I don't know Tom Cotton. They met with, yo, come on. They met with over 50 members of Congress. I don't make things up, okay? I'm not a liar. You call me a liar? Rick Scat. Y'all. This is a real problem. This is a real problem. They're getting away with it in broad daylight. Jon Stewart's putting medals on these fucking Nazis' necks. Oh, but Dan, Zelensky's Jewish. Shut the fuck up. You're a baby. You guys, this is not good. This truly is not good. No, they're in Chicago. Talking in Chicago.
But they never been in the...
Oh, there's a picture, by the way, of this guy and the other Nazis on their Nazi sympathy tour on their stop in Chicago. Standing next to this guy. I just can't find the pictures. This guy in the hat. His name's Bill or something. You guys, they're Nazis. Yo, I hate Stalin because he didn't finish the job.
Their regiment. They never been in the battalion because they want.
He should have finished the job.
The KZ unit, part of the organic part of the National Guard of Ukraine. It's in Battalion Azov.
Try harder.
Became unacceptable such a behavior or idea.
Look at these Nazis talking in Chicago. Look at these Nazis talking in Chicago. I am like, honestly, I don't know what I would have done if I would have known they were there.
Unit never will represent this far-right ideas who
Probably nothing. Probably nothing.
push such kind of ideology.
I'm a baby.
So that was unacceptable since we got rid of these people because
Fuck Nazis.
either you are standing with the units because units.
Whatever, homie. Here's Michael McFall. Michael McFall. Yo. Yo. Just imagine you're their CIA or like Ukrainian deep state handlers or whatever. You are so happy seeing this. You know what I mean? Think about who that's making. This is making somebody very happy. Okay? I want that to piss you off for a second. Okay? Let that piss you off because that's reality. Michael McFall, this motherfucker's on like Rachel Maddow talking to your parents about how we should have a no-fly zone, how we should be like instigating World War III with Russia. He's got a fucking Azov sign right on this projected image behind him. You fucking kidding me? They put that on Nazi tanks, okay? Imagine you're their handlers, these fucking Azov Nazis. You're so happy right now. You're seeing this image and you're like, all right, we've done our job for today. Everyone, you could pack it up. You can have a nice champagne. You've earned it. Okay? Is that pissing you off or what? How do you feel, chat? Come on, I've been talking for a minute. What do you think? What are the feelings going through your... Like, how does this make you feel? This pisses me off. How many kids are in this audience? Makes me furious. You're watching Nazi propaganda. You're looking at Nazi propaganda. This is simply not acceptable. What was that sound? I do not believe in free speech for far-right reactionaries. I don't believe in it. Michael McFall. Yo, I gotta talk to my partner's parents. They watch Rachel Maddow. What do they call? Did I call her Rachel McMaddow? What is that? Did I just make that up? Okay. And they ask me, why should we not have a no-fly zone over Ukraine? They literally asked me. And I'm like, oh no. We're done. I hate Illinois Nazis. McMaddow. I don't know where that came from. Fail. I think they are. I would believe it. I would not be at all surprised if they were like, oh yeah, Putin. You know. Yo, if you think everyone's brainwashed about Ukraine and this community is unique and needs support, needs your money. You're right.
Love your face.
You can subscribe, gift a subscription. You can support monthly on Patreon. Come on, let's be honest. A dono is nice. All donos right now are going to a member of the community who needs mutual aid support. You could buy merch or support on Etsy. Not my intention to be disruptive. A lot there. Okay.
You got mail.
Thank you for the 100 biddies. Love your face, homie. Yeah. All right. All right. All right. What are we doing? What are we doing here? Our plan. I don't know. I don't know. Oh. We got 20 minutes. All right. 20 more minutes of this video. And then we'll check out the Bingus.
In local politics, and they became involved in the Republican Party, and the Ronald Reagan campaign was...
I have extreme ADD.
Definitely involved with a lot of these groups.
Well, so and here's an example. There's one of the biggest OUNB people in the United States, this guy Oskar Blazinski, who he's a lawyer. He's also pretty anti-Semitic. He was a lawyer for some of these Ukrainian Nazi collaborators and people who were accused of being war criminals by the Department of Justice. He was an official advisor to Ukrainian Americans for Biden. But before the LaRouche people get too excited about me proving them right about the Democrats and Ukrainian neo-Nazis, Ukrainians for Trump was straight up OUNB front group. And the person who was the point person between the Trump campaign and Ukrainian Americans for Trump is now a lawyer for the U.S. leadership of OUNB, which is involved in this legal dispute. Or there's just been this legal saga since 2019 that involves the Bandera people trying to reestablish their dominance in Little Ukraine, Manhattan. I worked in that neighborhood for almost a year, and that's another, like you said, another kind of hotbed of Ukraine nationalism. Although they've kind of gotten, I guess, gentrified out of existence a bit, but it's, I don't know. It's real, and it's important, and it's influential, and I don't know if it's here to stay. A lot of the people involved they're getting up there. They're like maybe about 70 years old, and a lot of them cut their teeth politically in this campaign against the Nazi hunting Office of Special Investigations. And, I think they feel like, ideologically at least, this war is like their biggest victory, because now they feel like they've been proven right about everything as far as they're concerned. And it seems like, much of, a lot of people basically agree with them that, it turns out the Ukrainian nationalists are right all along. And, and so again, that's why this idea that the invasion is about denazifying or anything is so ridiculous, because it's it's God's gift to them. And it gets even more depressing when, the Progressive Caucus or just members of the most progressive part of the Progressive Caucus can't meet, a majority of Americans support some kind of diplomacy in Ukraine, even if that means that Ukraine has to make some kind of concessions. And yet you can't really find anyone in Washington who will agree with the, or at least openly agree with where a majority of Americans are at.
Imagine Pokemon had like, dialectical and historical materialism and class consciousness and was a Marxist. That would be sick.
And it's like if more than 50% of the United States supports diplomacy in Ukraine, it's like worldwide got to be much more than that, because of course it's not just Americans' votes and opinions that matter on this, because if this goes nuclear, it's everyone's dead. And so I think all this stuff is way too important to just cede leadership of, what passes the anti-war movement in the country to this opportunistic cult that is only really concerned about its own prestige and recruiting more and more people into this cult. And they really are kind of like the flip side of Nafo. I mean, they're both extremely nihilistic, and they both pro-war, and they're going to kill us all if they have their way, and it's scary. But I'm glad to have been able to drop a little bomb on Nafo and then drop a little bomb on the LaRouche people. But interestingly, with the Nafo people, they were all coming after me like crazy.
They have a lot more. They have many more resources,
right? But the LaRouche thing, no one so far, I don't think, maybe since this has started, but no one has given me a single ounce of pushback for that article. I think because I don't know that anyone can dispute the just utter hypocrisy of the LaRouche people claiming to be so concerned about Ukrainian neo-Nazis. And so, I mean, lastly, the second part of Ilhan Omar's tweet, where she makes, includes a Russian emoji or emoji of a Russian flag in her tweet, that part was, will make you cringe. But the first part of her tweet, where, responding to this viral video or clip of the incident where these LaRoucheites heckle her, because she's the most recent, if you want to say, victim or target of this campaign, her response was to say, "I'm sorry, but you all are not anti-war activists. You're making a mockery of the anti-war movement." And she's exactly right. And, only the people she got dogpiled for that, people misinterpreting deliberately or not, that she's talking about anyone who would work up the courage to confront her or any other member of Congress about this. But that's another thing that's so dangerous and self-defeating about this, is that it's giving all these members of Congress an excuse that if they're ever confronted or someone tries to hold their feet to the fire about what's going on, they now have an out to just be like, "Oh, well, you're part of the LaRoucheite movement, or you were inspired by them, or this is all just some kind of cult thing, and you're all pro-Russian, whatever." And so it is exactly right that they're the ones making a mockery, and they're completely kneecapping the ability of any anti-war movement to get off the ground. And I hate, and it's just, yeah, it's even more self-defeating.
Oh, it would be so much better if one of you did it instead of them. You get that, right? The tactic is good. It's because of the fact that they're full of shit that makes them able and everyone else able to dismiss it. If it was literally any one of you, except for a couple of you I got my eyes on, it'd be so much better. But that's why everyone's able to dismiss all of these attacks. Because they're not from a place of consistency. One of these days, they're going to be talking about AOC being yelled at by a member of the only dance community.
I think then, or to let these people take the initiative is even more embarrassing and self-defeating, I think, than the progressives
Only yelling.
Retracting what was called the world's smallest trial balloon for diplomacy. And someone commented on in response to this thing I wrote on the LaRoucheite stuff that if these people aren't, if these provocateurs can't be stopped, it's like game over, And I don't know that's true, but it does kind of feel that way. That it's just the as they say with the Trump era all the time, the walls are closing in, for any kind of possibility to stop this before it gets too late, because these things have a way of spiraling out of control.
Yeah, or making it impossible to articulate an alternative political vision, which is the most frustrating thing about this, is that we're always trapped in this binary of this false debate between really Republicans and Democrats. Everything gets sucked into the infinite density of the black hole of partisan politics, and it is what paralyzes people and prevents them from being able to articulate an anti-war position, a left-wing position that isn't just going to support blindly the Democratic Party, but also isn't going to argue that the Republican Party is somehow our lesser evil. And we've gone over time here.
Wow.
I'll just conclude here by saying that anyone who wants to learn more about all these issues really should check out Moss's work. He's done excellent reporting over years now.
Yeah. Also, get the unexpected cheddar cheese spread from Trader Joe's. It's fantastic. You're going to love it.
And you can find that at two different places. I'll link to that in the description below. One is the banderalobby.substack.com.
Yeah, I said that.
And this is a lot of really good research about these far-right fascist Ukrainian ultranationalist networks, not only in Ukraine, but also specifically in the U.S. and Canada. They have a lot of influence.
I already said that.
And then you can also find some other reporting that he does over at Robeson.medium.com, Ooks, Kooks, and Spooks.
Oops.
I have linked to his two reports below in the description below about the Nazi founder of Nafo and also about the LaRouche cult. And
it's Ukes, right? As in Ukrainians?
Yeah, at that blog, you can also find his report on the U.S. government inviting, or U.S. Congress people inviting Ukrainian fascists from Azov to Washington. Moss
is Moss on the Ukrainian kill list? Because if not, he's not trying hard enough. Try harder.
Do you want to plug anything else? I guess people can also, they can find you at Twitter at Moss Robeson in 2 underscores.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd say is that the Substack Bandera Lobby blog is exclusively about OUNB. I kind of can't help myself but to make all these connections to OUNB and the other blog, but that one is kind of where I'm trying to branch out into other things. So there's another article there about the victims of communism, and I want to do a follow-up about that, or Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. But
let's go!
Yeah, no, that's it. And yeah, thank you so much for this. It's these things, this conversation could go on so long that, in a lot of ways we've just kind of scratched the surface. If people feel like we're not trying to excuse the hypocrisy of Democrats, I think reading this thing I wrote about the LaRoucheite, you'll find even more hypocrisy, more mind-blowing hypocrisy of Democrats, and how they really have opened themselves up to, the LaRoucheite cult to capitalize on what cowards they are. But that doesn't mean that, you know, I don't know. It's just so absurd that the LaRouche people are getting away with this.
Yeah, and I'll say the last note I'll say
Messiah.
before you go out here is you pointed out that a majority of people in the U.S. and many other countries support diplomacy. They do want this war to end. Unlike a lot of these imperial planners in Washington, they don't want to continue using Ukrainians as cannon fodder in a proxy war against Russia. This is a poll that was done in September, and it found that 57% of voters, not just people in the United States, specifically voters, support diplomatic negotiations to end the war in Ukraine, even if Ukraine has to make compromises. And every country engaging in any diplomatic process always has to engage in compromises. That's how wars end. They end with both sides making compromises. So this is a popular policy, although you never see it reflected in the media, and you don't see it reflected by mainstream politicians either. It's really frustrating. And I've tried to do a lot of reporting on this, on how Western governments have killed attempts at having a diplomatic breakthrough, like we saw in late March and early April after there were peace talks held in Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole other long conversation.
Actually, one last point I would like to make. I don't think Zelensky is capable of taking the initiative, because if he does, he's going to wind up like Gaddafi. And that might sound ridiculous, but I mean, the opposition to him.
Except unlike Gaddafi, who was killed by like NATO-backed forces, you're saying, well, I guess they are NATO-backed. You're saying he'd be killed internally by.
I mean, he'll be lynched if he were to.
Yeah, I guess they're both NATO-backed.
If he made some kind of deal, I mean, I know we're trying to wrap up here, but there was this whole movement from almost the moment he gets into office opposing because Zelensky was elected on a peace agenda, and there's this weird thing of U.S. history where it's like the hawks are the only ones who can make diplomacy. It's like Nixon going to China or Trump in North Korea, even though, of course, in both cases starting with this madman theory, whatever. And then on the flip side,
Reagan signing the arms treaties, which is what established the possibility of de-escalation of the Cold War, the first Cold War.
But then you have Zelensky come in as a peace candidate, and he's completely sabotaged. And then so when Biden comes into office, he does this flip to even outdoing Poroshenko, his predecessor, in terms of going after, so-called Russian influence in the country, which, there's not to say that there's no.
Not sure I'm picking up what he's putting down.
Of course, Russia has basically he shut
down opposition media. Like Zelensky shut down opposition media many months before Russia invaded. He shut down, pro-Russian media in scare quotes. I mean, some of it is pro-Russian.
But he undercut Russia's soft power, basically.
Legalized political parties. Yeah, all of that.
And the thing is, when Biden was coming into office or was running, Michael Carpenter, this guy, the Biden advisor on Ukraine and Russia, who's an idiot and crazy or whatever, hawk, he was promising that Biden will drastically increase lethal aid to Ukraine, but then also that the Biden administration will, quote, help beat back this growing, by the way, Russian influence in Ukraine. So this is, basically Biden campaign and before getting into office is signaling to Zelensky that, if you want to be on our good side, this is what you need to do. And then it's after this pivot when that Russia starts to amass troops on Ukraine's border. And, there was something called the capitulation resistance movement. And they weren't the only ones, but they were kind of vying with the Azov movement and other people who were even more extreme than them to basically threaten a new Maidan revolution against Zelensky if he made any kind of capitulation to Russia, which was basically meant negotiate it all or give up anything. And the leader of that movement is a guy, Andriy Levus. And after Russia invaded, he openly revealed that he is the deputy head of OUNB for policy. So again, not trying to make a unifying theory of everything with OUNB, but this is important stuff, and they have played a role historically and in like recent history into where we are today. And it's, this isn't about, I don't buy this narrative that, Putin had no choice but to invade Ukraine. I mean, yes, the United States, NATO, all of that has played a role in provoking it. But, of course, well, you really need to present a lot more evidence if you're going to make the argument that Putin had no choice but to invade when he did. But undoubtedly, this whole history that we're kind of touching on, if only even a little bit surface level, is, I think, very important to, explaining how we got here. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is the position of many countries around the world. Certainly, China has taken the position of saying that the war has only made the situation worse. We need a diplomatic resolution. I mean, you pointed out the war has ironically made Ukrainian fascists even more powerful. I mean, they were there. Obviously, we spent 2 hours talking about how the Ukrainian far right did have influence, especially in the security services. People always talk about the parliament, but the parliament misses the forest for the trees. We're focusing on the military, the National Guard, the police, these groups like C-14, obviously Azov. They did have significant influence, and now they have more influence, and they're national heroes, and they're celebrated internationally. So it's a disaster on that front, and it's, of course, strengthened NATO. Mm-hmm. NATO is stronger than it's been in many decades. So this war, I mean, has been bad for really everyone except, arms dealers, the military-industrial complex. It's and
the neo-Nazis in Ukraine.
Yeah. So of course, that's why we constantly have stressed the importance of a diplomatic resolution, and the fact that almost no one in mainstream U.S. or European politics is willing. It's probably a sign that. Can you hear me?
Sorry, you are cutting out for me, but
my power went out really briefly. That's probably a sign that we should wrap this up. We're already almost 2 hours. I want to thank Mas Robeson, great journalist, a researcher. I have links to his blogs below. I want to thank everyone who commented. There were a lot of things I wanted to respond to, comments, super chats, but we have hundreds and hundreds of comments, and there was a big debate going on. And it's we're already at almost 2 hours. So unfortunately, I didn't have time to respond to those.
Yeah.
There's a lot of very, very vibrant debate going on people on multiple sides arguing.
My DMs are open if anyone wants to,
Yeah, and people can
on Twitter.
Yeah, I'll just again put this up. People can follow Mas at Mas Robeson 2_. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, okay. We're gonna drop out there. Here's the thing. I'm going to do a quick raid out. I want to thank you for hanging out with me today. As always. Once again, I am asking for your financial support. Okay? So, maybe you got a couple bucks. I'd appreciate it. Means a lot. All right, I'm going to raid out, though. I want to raid Ambigubat. Here's a shout out. Here comes a raid. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. Be good to Ambigubat. Okay, safety first. All power to all the people. Free all political prisoners. Love your face. We'll see you next time. Goodbye. See you. Goodbye. Yep. Okay. Right.
Go fuck yourself, you cunt.
What the fuck? That's the wrong button. I'm sorry about that. Sorry.
With the cocks touching.
Are you kidding me? I didn't push that.
Mediocre.
Are you serious?
Mediocre.
No way.
Gotta have them ribs.
Yep.
And pussy too.
Oh my God. That's insane.
We do it because it's right.
What?
Hang on a minute. It's not your country, Joe.
Yeah.
You doddering old fool.
All right. Well.
Of the Islamic Union of Mujahideen of Afghanistan.
Oh my gosh.
Other members of his distinguished delegation.
You can't believe that happened. Washington, D.C.
Get the fuck out of here.
The Holodomor was not real.
Love your face.